Recording in progress.
Good morning, Chairperson. Good morning, members of the Portfolio Committee. Good morning, Minister, DG, and then also the delegation from the South African Human Rights Commission. Chairperson, I will hand over to you. We do have a quorum. Thank you.
Morning, Llewellyn. Can you help us with a roll call?
Thank you, Chairperson. I have yourself, Honorable Binko Gigaba. I have Honorable Morowane. I have Honorable Letsie, Honorable Moroatsetla. I have Honorable Mashabela and Honorable Madlingozi. Apologies only from the department, and that is for the Deputy Minister, Dr. Mahule, who won't be able to join us due to prior commitments. Thank you, Chairperson.
No, thank you very much. Morning, everybody. Let me greet the Minister. I'm not sure if DM is in the meeting. Let me greet DG and Team DBE. My apologies. I've got flu. I'm sick with flu. Let me also welcome and greet the Human Rights Commission and greet our staff as well. Can you flight the agenda, Llewellyn? Thank you. Thank you very much. Today, members, we are having the Human Rights Commission report, which is going to be on the investigation and inquiry into school uniforms and the over-regulating of appearances, specifically in the Eastern Cape. This is a report of 2022. It was referred to our committee on the 17th of November, 2023. After that, we are going to look into the draft legacy report, and then we are going to adopt the minutes of the 27th of February. Can I get members to adopt the agenda? Mamurane. Amurwane?
Am I audible, Chair?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much, Honorable Chair, and greetings to your good self, to the Honorable Minister, Deputy Minister, members of the Portfolio Committee, all staff, the DG, and the entire leadership. I want to move that we adopt this agenda as presented, Honorable Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable Adwans. Honorable Adwans.
Good morning. Good morning, Honorable Chairperson. Good morning to honorable members of the Portfolio Committee. Good morning, Honorable Minister and Deputy Minister. Good morning to the DG and the entire officials of DBE. Good morning to the staff of Parliament and everyone in the platform. Chair, I stand to second the adoption of the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you very much, honorable members. At this point, I'm going to allow Minister Motshekga to probably give us a political overview. Thank you, Ma.
No, thank you very much, Chair. And let me also acknowledge yourself as the chair of the committee and members of the committee. Also acknowledge the representatives from the Human Rights Commission and also officials from TBE. Chair, I don't think there's a political input that I really wish to make, except that I think the matters that we're going to engage with will enable us to really, because the department has shared with me, or we have even discussed the contents of today's meeting. And we will, I think after getting the presentation from Human Rights Commission, explain to the committee how far we are on those matters they raise. So rather than respond before they raise them, let's allow, I would wish to, we allow the meeting and then we'll be able to respond appropriately because it's matters that we're seized with. And I think we'll explain where we are on those matters. So Chair, let me not waste your time except for thanking you very much again for the opportunity that you give us to come and present ourselves and the work that we do to the committee. Thank you very much, Chair.
Okay, Ma, thank you very much. From the Human Rights Commission, who's gonna lead the presentation? HRC. Lebele?
Chairperson, I see Chepo Madlingozi. His mic is on, but we cannot hear him. I'm not sure.
Is it a
Maybe
Madlingozi that? Is it a Madlingozi?
that's
No,
correct.
it's not on. It's on now.
No, who is doing a presentation from Human Rights Commission? That's my question.
No, good morning, Chairperson. I am
Oh,
Busi
okay.
Mkhize. I'm Busi Mkhize, the CEO of the Human Rights Commission. Our
Is it
leader
you,
of the
Busi?
Yes, it will be Dr. Carter. We are the leader of the delegation is Commissioner Madlingozi. And I'm sure he's maybe struggling with the communication on his side. But just to indicate, the presentation will be done by Dr. Carter, and Dr. Carter is the Eastern Cape Provincial Manager for the Human Rights Commission. I'm not sure if Professor Commissioner Madlingozi is available now to be able to make his introductory remarks before Dr. Carter does the presentation. Commissioner Madlingozi.
Good morning, CEO. Good morning, Chair. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you. I can hear you, Madlingozi.
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, Minister. Good morning, staff from the DBE. Good morning, members of the committee, and good morning, the staff of Parliament. Chair, my name is Tsepo Madlingozi. I am a commissioner at the South African Human Rights Commission. I will be leading the delegation this morning. May I proceed, Chair?
No, but then lead with the presentation. Where is your presentation, people? Can you flight this? Do they have a presentation, or are you gonna talk to us? What is going on? Really?
We are going to flight our presentation. I just wanted to start by tendering the apologies of the chairperson of the commission. Unfortunately, the chair won't be with us this morning, but as the commissioner in charge of education, I'll be leading the delegation. Dr. Carter, the provincial manager of the Eastern Cape, will be leading with our presentation, and thereafter I will make some concluding remarks. So, Chair, with your permission, I will hand it over to the provincial manager of the Eastern Cape. But just to say that we are coming to the committee in terms of Section 184 of the Constitution. We are also have the honor to be before you in terms of Section 13 of the South African Human Rights Commission Act, which does empower us to carry out inquiries as well as investigations. So the background to this report is that we did receive a number of complaints, primarily from the Eastern Cape, whereupon we instituted an inquiry. And what we wish to do today is to table the report, and we look forward to some fruitful engagement and positive outcomes. So, Dr. Carter, over to you.
Thank you so much, Commissioner. Honorable Chairperson, Honorable Ministers, thank you for this opportunity. I just want to confirm whether my screen is being shared and that you can see our presentation.
Yes, we can see it.
Thank you so much, Chairperson. To go straight into our presentation, Chairperson, I will be going quickly through the introduction, the mandate of the Commission, the background and the context, the analysis, the findings, and the recommendations. As Prof. Madlingozi has already indicated, the Human Rights Commission is an independent state institution established in terms of Section 181 of the Constitution. Now, our mandate is derived from Section 184, and this is basically for us that is required to promote respect for human rights, promote the protection, development, and attainment of human rights, and to monitor and assess observance, very importantly, of human rights. Now, the powers necessary for us to perform our functions is derived from Section 184(2). This says that we need to investigate and to report on the observance of human rights and take steps to secure appropriate redress where human rights have been violated. It also includes carry out research and as well as to educate. So we have additional powers, honorable members, in terms of the legislation, including the South African Human Rights Commission Act. Now, Section 13, Prof. Madlingozi has already touched upon this section, and specifically Section 13(1)(a)(1) as well as 1(b)(5) gives us a number of powers and functions, which includes the power to investigate on our own initiative or on receipt of a complaint. So the background and the context, honorable members, of this investigation is we noted an increase in reports of alleged overregulation of the school uniforms and appearances of learners. So the Commission, through our office in the Eastern Cape, resolved to not only further investigate these matters, but we also hosted an inquiry into the allegations of discriminations against learners in this regard. The inquiry was hosted in Gqeberha. So the inquiry further included the participation of numerous stakeholders. This included education within the province, Office of the Premier, but we also had several independent and private schools participating, labor unions, tertiary institutions, and complainants themselves. So what has been our analysis in respect of the summary of the submissions? Now, what I'm going to present to you is just a common thread of what these submissions looked like during the inquiry. So the common themes emerged from submissions revealing key aspects of the perceived role of school uniforms and associated challenges. Participants consistently recognized school uniforms for enhancing safety, discipline, and a conducive learning environment. Concerns, however, arose regarding gender-neutral policies, regulation of hairstyles, particularly of Black students, and the accommodation of cultural and religious symbols. The notion of excessive control and restrictions and varying interpretation of national guidelines were recurrent issues, leading to inconsistent implementations. Discriminatory practices against gender non-conforming learners were identified and contravening constitutional protections. So what has been our analysis of the summary of the submissions? Well, the submissions highlighted the complexity of diversity and inclusion in South African schools, emphasizing the need for balanced policies respecting cultural and religious rights, as the court case in Pillay also echoed. So stakeholders stressed aligning school policies with constitutional principles, parental involvement in governance, and adapting policies to societal changes. So we need to also then mention that The analysis pointed to mediating cultural contradictions, even promoting adaptability and continuous reflection were recognized as crucial elements. Comprehensive guidelines, and this is very specific to the National Department, the guidelines that we will be speaking about today. Comprehensive guidelines addressing evolving perspectives at provincial and national levels were deemed as essential. In summary, the submissions collectively advocated for policies fostering diversity, number one, inclusion and constitutional values within South African schools, emphasizing the need for an inclusive, adaptable, and rights-respecting educational environment. Now, honorable members, just to give you a little bit of a snapshot of this historical context. So what we did in terms of our investigation is we went into what the academics are saying about where does school uniforms in fact come from. And what we found was school uniforms influenced by European origins evolved to symbolize conformity and socioeconomic status. Protests in the 1960s challenged compulsory policies, questioning parental rights and expressing concerns about conformity and financial burdens. In the US and Argentina, just to give you a little bit of a comparative analysis, uniforms were linked to disciplining bodies and debates on freedom of expression. In Africa, colonialism introduced uniforms to distinguish between the elite and uneducated children. So South Africa basically, and that's the premise from which we are moving, honorable members, is we adopted an assimilation approach, inheriting a system incompatible even with its diverse culture. The historical legacies lack Afrocentric perspectives, explaining perhaps even the absence of traditional symbols in the uniforms we see today. So the analysis, you would have noted from the summary of the submissions, we highlighted a few key and common threads that emanated from these submissions. And the first one was discipline. And this is what our participants told us, that discipline, school uniforms assist in discipline. Now, one of the purposes of school uniforms, as cited, as I've indicated, includes improving discipline and academic performance. However, research results on the claimed benefits of uniforms, such as enhanced discipline and positive school climate perceptions, are inconclusive. The empirical evidence supporting the idea that uniforms enhance student performance is scarce. The Commission emphasizes reservations about the direct correlation between school uniforms and improved discipline or academic performance and prowess even, underscoring the need for further research on the subject. Another element that was highlighted was safety. The assertion that school uniforms significantly contribute to learner safety is also questioned by the Commission. While uniforms are claimed to aid in learner identification and reduce gang-related issues, the Commission emphasized that other security measures and community-wide efforts are crucial. So you would have seen in the report that we have submitted to you, honorable members, that we've done an analysis even on the data presented from gang-related violence nationally. And concerns about gang-related violence, often cited to justify uniform policies, are questioned based on the infrequency of such events on a national scale. The Commission suggests a localized approach, perhaps, considering that gang-related issues are concentrated in specific regions even, particularly in the Western Cape, and may not be prevalent in other provinces. The narrative, therefore, and you would have seen that this is very clearly reflected in our report, is coming from and borrowed from the United States, and we are scrutinizing this for its applicability to the South African context. Hair and appearance policies. Honorable members, this has been a big issue within the Human Rights Commission and remains one of the key issues that we usually receive in respect of these matters. It's the policing and the over-policing of hair and appearance. The inquiry revealed significant and contentious issues regarding the regulation of learners' hair. Honorable members, and here I have to pause, we were provided with information that learners are subjected to a two-finger policy for African male learners, where teachers would literally put their hands on the body of the learner to measure the length of their afros. And disciplinary actions would then, for certain hairstyles or braids, be instituted. And this obviously caused for massive anxiety and stress amongst the learners. So the complaints highlighted biases rooted again in Eurocentric norms, neglecting African hairstyles, which were historically stigmatized during apartheid. And we've drawn the analysis and perhaps the parallel with a pencil test used during apartheid reinforced the idea that straight hair has superiority. So policing African students' hair, we are very expressly questioning this, emphasizing the need to critically examine such actions given the historical context of our country. The inquiry affirms the importance of prioritizing, number one, the well-being of these children that are subjected to this policing and protection of children within the school environment. And honorable members, we have taken guidance from legal precedent in this respect, and this is just one of the cases, the Welkom High case, that we would like to cite. We are continuing with the hair and appearance policies. Additionally, learners violating uniform and appearance policies may face disciplinary actions per the school's code of conduct. So also taking guidance from the model disciplinary processes as offered by the department, offenses are categorized based on severity, with grade 1 offenses being minor, grade 2 offenses including unacceptable hairstyles. Disciplinary processes for grade 1 offenses involve warnings and hearings, while grade 2 offenses may be escalated to a tribunal hearing. So notably, learners may face disciplinary action for natural hair or hair length, particularly boys. So the Commission asserts that natural hairstyle should never be deemed an offence, aligning with legal precedent. The lack of sound research supporting hair regulation is again, honourable members, questioned, with a concern raised about the subjective nature even of neatness, a concept that is very clear in our report and that has been echoed by academics as well, and that neatness standards and gender-based distinctions in hair lengths policies must be questioned. So what about the binary nature of uniforms? Schools in South Africa maintain a strict binary approach to uniform policies, reinforcing gender stereotypes and even misogyny. These policies often regulate femininity, girlhood, and sexuality, perpetuating patriarchal norms. Girls, particularly honourable members, face detailed dress codes, including instructions, and you would be very surprised to do a quick Google search and see these instructions live on your screens on underwear, contributing to appearance policing. The binary approach excludes gender non-conforming learners, prompting concerns about discrimination against the LGBTIQ+ community. So despite acknowledging social and educational roles, uniform policies are divided binary and treated as disciplinary matters. The Constitutional Court deems policies discriminating against learners as unlawful, emphasizing the importance of protecting the LGBTIQ community's rights. So the Commission again advocates for gender-neutral uniform policies, allowing learners to dress according to their gender identity and expression, and urging schools to refrain from stricter enforcement against gender non-conforming students. What was our analysis on cultural and religious attire? So what we found, Minister and honourable members, is stakeholders were very much aware of the Pillay judgment, emphasizing that learners' rights to cultural and religious expression is very important. So in this matter, the court ruled against Durban Girls High School, stating that preventing a learner from wearing a nose stud infringed on her rights and stressed the need to celebrate diversity. The decision highlighted the importance of realistic codes and exceptions, promoting very important concept, reasonable accommodation. So as the Commission, while guidelines recommend considering religious and cultural diversity, we are concerned about the application process, which may then be subjective and burdensome. So encouraging a rights-based approach, the Commission urges schools to prioritize dignity, again, the well-being of children, and self-expression without solely relying on a potential administrative approval for exemption applications related to cultural and religion. I'm continuing now, honourable members, Minister, Chairperson, with the findings of the Commission. So it was found that in certain circumstances that school uniforms and appearances policies infringed on a learner's right to dignity. We could find no legitimate purpose for regulating hair length applying different standards to male and female learners, disallowing natural hair, enforcing gender stereotypical uniforms, regulating the color of girls' hair and underwear, and treating appearances and uniform violations as disciplinary issues. The cost, further, honorable members, of school uniforms can be prohibitive, leading to a lack of access to education for some learners. The regulation, very importantly here, of girls' underwear invades girls' privacy and dignity, as there is no way to enforce it without grossly violating their rights. Notably, there are no references to policies or codes that prescribe boys' underwear. So what did we say in respect of the right to equality? Well, we found that enforcing binary school uniform policies can be seen as enforcing traditional gender roles and norms, as uniforms often have different dress codes for boys and girls, potentially violating Section 9 of the Constitution and the Equality Act. The enforcement of gendered school uniform constitutes unfair discrimination, as it impairs human dignity, perpetuates stereotypes, and restricts learners' rights to express their gender identity freely. So policing the length of male learners' hair while not applying the same approach to female learner constitute an infringement on the rights of male learners to be treated equally. Enforcing school uniform and appearance policies based on historical practices of policing and regulating the bodies of African and women learners is unacceptable. We continued with our findings in respect of right to freedom of belief, religion and opinion, and the right to culture and language. In this regard, the Commission found that a lack of a clear accommodation process may violate the rights to culture, religion, and expression of learners. The default position in this respect of accommodation should not be Eurocentric, but must embrace the riches of South Africa's cultural and religious diversity. Our findings in respect of the freedom of expression, and this is important, honorable members, the Commission finds that the socio-economic climate in South Africa justifies the enforcement of an obligatory school uniform policy, generally, as it helps reduce socio-economic disparities amongst students, leveling the playing field. So this particular paragraph is very important for our discussion, as we find that there is space for school uniforms in the South African context. However, school uniforms must not be unaffordable. It must be available, reasonable, and practical to serve their purpose, compelling learners to procure expensive or impractical items is unjustified. Honorable members, and I reflect back to the report that we have tabled before you today, we make reference to load shedding. We make reference to caregivers having to iron shirts while there's only one uniform available. We make reference to all of these, and we ask whether there is still space for certain materials even to be worn in this context. What did we find? And we're coming to the end of the presentation in respect of the best interest of the child. Well, as you've seen is the golden thread throughout this presentation and echoing Section 28 of the Constitution, we found that bodily autonomy infringes such as the two-finger test on the bodies of African or other learners, and monitoring the color of girls' uniforms, underwear, can never serve to the best interests of the child. These practices are archaic and degrading, violating Section 28 of the Constitution. And all other violations I have just mentioned above by the Constitution also constitute violations of Section 28 of the Constitution, as it can never be in the child's best interest to unjustifiably limit any of their human rights. Honorable members, the findings of this report have broad implications, and that is why, although I'm coming with a voice from the Eastern Cape, this has a national footprint. And it has implications for all school uniforms and appearance policies, irrespective of whether they are implemented in the public or private school sector. Patterns of overregulation in respect of school uniforms and learners' appearances have been identified that may infringe upon the fundamental human rights as protected by the Constitution. Now, what were our recommendations? Honourable members and Minister, as you would know, one of the immediate reforms that we are calling upon, and that is also in line with our Section 13 mandate of the South African Human Rights Commission Act, we are calling upon the National Department to immediately abolish any hair policies differentiating between male and female learners, eliminating these discriminatory practices related to afros, braids, or natural hairstyles chosen by specific learners. We have even indicated the anecdotal evidence, whereas we are saying that a boy child whose hair touches his ear will still be able to do mathematics as a girl child would when her hair touches her ear. So in terms of gender stereotypical uniform policies, all learners should be allowed to wear any item of school clothing forming part of the approved school uniform, irrespective of sex or gender identity. Gender-neutral options must be provided for gender non-conforming learners. And in respect, and you would have clearly noted the emotion behind this finding, the practice of prescribing underwear for female learners must be eradicated and condemned. Reporting invasive monitoring to law enforcement, we are also encouraging in this respect. So, honourable members, within 6 months, we have requested and recommended that the department, not only the national department, but provincial departments as well, conduct an audit of all school codes to ensure deviation and accommodation processes, allowing learners to express their culture, religion, and beliefs. This is echoed by the Constitutional Court in Pele. The national department should conduct a baseline assessment to determine a cap on the costs of basic school uniforms, considering socioeconomic circumstances, binding directives, and we note the Competition Commission's role where they have played a collaborative attempt in this respect with the department. But we are calling upon binding directives that should be issued, emphasizing that expensive items such as blazers are not compulsory. We then request the National Department to amend the uniform guidelines to include the uniform report, our report's findings, considering binding directives instead of guidelines to prevent non-compliance. And in respect of 8 months, the Commission has requested and recommended that the National Department and provinces must provide a report on addressing the above directives and recommendations with clear timeframes and action items. So what is the applicability and the collaboration element of this report? Honourable Members, Minister, the Commission acknowledges the role of SGBs and private school authorities, but we emphasize the ultimate responsibility of the National Department and provinces for compliance with human rights. Private schools are urged to align policies with recommendations, fostering collaboration for inclusive and rights-respecting uniform policies. Honourable members, I thank you for this opportunity. I'm going to hand back to the leader of this delegation, Prof. Madlingozi, to do the concluding remarks. And again, we thank you for taking the time for us to table this report. Over to you, Prof.
Thank you so much, Dr. Carter. Thank you so much, Minister. Thank you so much, the Chair of the committee. So, members of the committee, as Dr. Carter mentioned, the inquiry was in Eastern Cape, but it does have national implications. We can report that we did send the report also to the select committee in the NCOP, so they do have the report. We can also confirm that having launched the report last year, we sent it to the Provincial Department of Basic Education in the Eastern Cape, to the Office of the Premier, and other stakeholders who did take part in the inquiry. So as you have seen, the report, you know, in terms of our findings, we do find systemic issues in terms of discrimination, in terms of unfair, you know, practices that occur in schools. And our wish and our recommendation is that, you know, directives be issued in order to eliminate these discriminatory practices. So, Chair, that is, in summary, our report. As I said, I'm here with a delegation from the Secretariat of the Human Rights Commission, led by Mr. Mkize, the CEO, as well as Fadla Adams from our Parliamentary and International Affairs Unit. So we will be able to take any questions and answers if the opportunity is given. So, Chair, thank you so much. That is our report. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Chairperson and Dr. Carter. DG, can I now hand over to you to lead your presentation?
Thank you, Chair, Honorable members, Honorable Minister. Chair, our presentation is going to be made by Mr. Liko Bottoman. And it's a very brief presentation. It covers the 3 areas that are highlighted, and I'm going to immediately hand over to him.
Thank you very much, DG. Good morning, Honorable Chair and Honorable members. Good morning to Honorable Minister and Deputy Minister, DG, and the senior officials of the DPE. I'm just going to then, on behalf of the Department of Basic Education, Honorable Chair, just provide some responses to some of the findings and the recommendations that have been made by the Commission. If you can just move to the next slide. And the next one. And the next one. So, Honorable Chair, I think it is important for us to, firstly, as the Department of Basic Education, to really acknowledge the current conversations that have been taking place with regard to human rights compliances in basic education. I think that as the department, this has been something that has been on our table for quite a long time. And we have been working with our stakeholders to ensure that, the issue of human rights and social cohesion and inclusion in basic education is taken into consideration as the center or the nucleus of care and support for teaching and learning, and to ensure the well-being of learners across the nation. And we are on an ongoing evolution as a sector to ensure that we are current in terms of what needs to happen in the sector to protect the rights of children. We have even established a unit that is specifically helping the sector to provide strategic guidance and support to provincial education departments so that there is compliance in terms of these issues. There are, of course, a number of recommendations that have been noted by the Commission, issues related to the cost and the, procurement models that have been established by schools in terms of school uniforms, the issues around the hair, and some of the markers of identity, cultural and religious identity that have been raised, and the issue of gender non-conforming learners as well. Next slide. So we do want to also just state to the Portfolio Committee, Honorable Chair, that ever since we received the report from the Commission, we have begun a process that is led by the Minister and the Director General to engage with our stakeholders on this report, so that we consult as widely and as deeply as possible with our stakeholders, so that when we respond on these issues and when we take forward some of the recommendations where applicable, we would be doing so from a position of collective a decision with our stakeholders. Because we are, in fact, a very sensitive sector, and that the sector is correlated with our stakeholders, and so it's important for us to engage and help them understand some of the emerging issues related to human rights and other matters that are related to basic education. And so if we can just take a little bit of discussion around some of the issues that have been raised. For example, the issue of the price of school uniforms. Whilst we understand, and acknowledge that, sometimes school uniforms can unintentionally be used as a discriminatory measure in schools, it is important for us to, once it is acknowledged and it is recognized that there is an issue around pricing and procurement models, which places a burden on families, an economic and financial burden on families. It is important for us to bring on board the Competition Commission. Since we started, even in the design of the guidelines for school uniforms, we have been working with the Competition Commission in this. And so we think that, the recommendations that have been raised by the Commission right now call for continued engagements with the Competition Commission, because it is really their mandate, to take charge of the space of determining the issue of the prices of school uniforms, and the whole issue around competition, and opening up the market for other service providers, and really trying to regulate the space in as far as certain schools that are using sole sourcing service providers and all of those things. So it is important then for us to bring them on board so that they're able to lead on this issue. Of course, as the Commission is saying, we will be able to provide guidance and make recommendations as the basic education sector, but ultimately the mandate lies with the Competition Commission to provide directives on these matters. But in as far as our policy frameworks are concerned, the determination of school uniforms is really the prerogative of school governing bodies. But be that as it may, we also understand, and we've made that as a general understanding in the sector, that the determination must be consultative, it must be constitutional, and it must be human rights compliant, such that it does not discriminate against certain individuals. You will recall, Honorable Chair and Honorable members, a couple of years ago, the Minister intervened with the SGB associations on a matter of hair that erupted, particularly in former Model C schools and independent schools, of natural hair, afros amongst girls, which was really a big debate in the sector. And ultimately, after that intervention, we then consolidated the sector and concluded that some of these human rights issues are really difficult to think about upfront. The sector is really able to grapple with these issues when these issues are actually, emerging on site, current, at that moment. And so we then decided as a sector that going forward, we know that some codes of conduct have been developed many years ago, before these issues came to the foreground, with issues of human rights came to the foreground in basic education. We were saying that in the event that a school recognizes that a code of conduct that has been approved by that particular school or that school governing body seems to be discriminating against a particular population of learners, it needs to be reviewed. And that was really the direction that Minister had given to all our schools, because we've got so many schools, more than 25,000 schools, with probably different kinds of school codes of conduct that seem to be working at the moment until human rights issues are then brought to the foreground, which then do exactly what Dr. Carter was saying. They then call for questioning of the school codes of conduct and policies. And so we're saying that the sector is open to engaging on a continuous basis on those school codes of conduct, so that in the end, if they are found to be infringing on learners' rights, that they are reviewed so that they become compliant. The South African Human Rights Commission is supporting the Department of Basic Education in the development of the protocol for the elimination of unfair discrimination in schools. And this is something that the Council for Education Ministers is currently dealing with, and we're hoping that within this year still we'll have a finalized document. And we are really grateful to the South African Human Rights Commission, firstly for their participation in that process, but also for the fact that these findings in this report are coming up at a time when we are still finalizing this protocol. So it means then that we still have an opportunity to ensure that the protocol that we're going to develop which provide a much more pronounced guidance on how to apply the current guidelines and policy frameworks and policies and legislation we have around school uniforms and related matters. And so we'll be able to then ensure that all of those feasible and practicable recommendations and findings are actually incorporated in the finalization of the protocol. And we do have the support from the South African Human Rights Commission to do that. But in addition to that, the Human Rights Commission and the Commission on Gender Equality and the Equal Education Law Center, the Education Labor Relations Council and SAHRC, and many of our stakeholders are also assisting us in the development of another document, Honorable Chair, that will provide sector guidance. Both these documents will provide sector guidance to schools and provincial education departments. Because we hear what Dr. Carter is saying, that the provincial education departments seem to have free will to do whatever they want to do, which is sometimes infringing on the rights of children. And so what we want to do then is to do exactly what the report is saying, to raise the conversations at a national level and provide that sector guidance to schools so that they're able to apply the existing laws in a way that will safeguard the rights of children, particularly those that have diverse sexual orientation, gender identity, expression, and sex characteristics. So once we're able to provide, we are certain actually that these two documents will then provide the guidance that is required to ensure that we are, constitutional and we are human rights compliant in what we put out as guidelines for school uniforms and other things. It's not just school uniforms, there are issues related to extramural activities, issues related to use of facilities, and so forth, including even the hair question that has been raised. Next slide. And so, as Dr. Carter has indicated, Chair, the Department of Basic Education has really been given 6 months to address this issue. And it seems like it is an order. And we, as the Basic Education Department, have already corresponded with the South African Human Rights Commission to indicate that the time that has been given to us to consolidate the sector and ensure that we bring on par some of the proposals that will be made in these sector guidance documents that I'm talking about, Honorable Chair, which will respond to many of the issues that have been raised by the report. It's a very short time. And we are saying that for us to consolidate the sector, we'll probably need the rest of this year to consolidate the sector, finalize the documents, mediate the documents, ensure that the South African Human Rights Commission has got sight of these documents and they're able to make their contribution as well. And so we really, really need the rest of the year, up until the end of the year, at least, to do that. And then we'll be able to take forward the proposed recommendations from the findings of the report. We do have constraints, of course, because it means then that for us, we've got to ensure that whatever we put out, emerging from the report is going to be practicable for our schools, because we don't want to sit around and sit on our own invalid corner, and determine how things should go without necessarily having engaged with our stakeholders. And so we are continuing. We have already started, as I've already indicated, Honorable Chair, that the Minister and the DG have been leading these engagements, and they're going so well. And we've been able to at least tackle a couple of them within a short space of time since the report was received. And we are going to continue to ensure that we cover all the bases. And so, but probably we also need to, I know that Dr. Carter was indicating the provisions of the Constitution and the fact that, they have the mandate to ensure that there is compliance, and then they must observe, and then they must monitor that whatever findings have been brought forward to the sectors are taken forward and there is implementation of those findings. And some of the stakeholders have expressed, a perceived overextension of designated powers of the South African Human Rights Commission, which can always be further clarified in this engagement, so that we're able to also take it back to our stakeholders, because I think particularly they were reacting to the fact that we're given a particular timeline to do it, almost like it's a court order for the sector, and that was the reaction really. The stakeholders also then advised that the price matter, being deferred to the Competition Commission. Of course, we're not doing this and abdicating ourselves as the sector. We take, the point and the caution that has been raised that as the basic education sector, we are the ones that are sitting in a position to provide guidance to the Commission when this mandate is taken forward. We do want to do some of the practical things that we can do that do not require of guidance and of guidelines, Chair. Things like how do we practically work with our SGB associations to look at practicable and feasible ways to alleviate the burden of uniform price on families. For example, there are things that are already coming up, which we have already started to work on with the Competition Commission. We're questioning whether it really is still necessary for schools to have winter uniforms and summer uniforms, which seems to be a challenge for many families, because these uniforms can be expensive, because it can be a total makeover between summer and winter for children. There is also another one that is quite interesting, which we have observed, where when children reach grade 12, to show the pride of being a grade 12 learner and being senior in the school, then they've got to wear a totally different uniform in the last year of schooling, which they use for less than 12 months after they've used these uniforms for the previous 4 years in the previous grades. And so we're also just assisting the sector to begin to question whether those things are really necessary for schools, and how can we use them as touch points to alleviate the price uniforms on families. And of course, we think that many of the issues that have been raised about gender-related matters in respect of school uniforms will be answered when we finally then put out the guidelines for SOGIES in schools, and then we'll be able to respond to those issues. We're getting the issue around gender-neutral uniforms and so forth. And so our position as the basic education sector, really, we don't intend to necessarily abolish the gender binaries that exist in the system. However, our biggest move as the sector is to ensure that there is social inclusion of children who are gender non-conforming. And we have to ensure that firstly, they are given the opportunity and the right to wear a gender-affirming uniform. And we know that there are practices in the system already around gender-neutral uniforms. And we see great and good practice, particularly in special schools or schools of learners with special education needs, where they just make use of school tracksuits for all children, whether you're a girl or you're a boy, a gender non-conforming child, they just make use of school tracksuits, and it works very well. So what we're saying, Honorable Chair, is that there are practices, pockets of practices that are already being implemented in certain parts of the system, and we're going to learn from those practices, and we're going to be able to use that to give expression and guidance in the documents that we are currently putting together, which will respond to some of this. And the South African Human Rights Commission is already part of that process in basic education. I think that, Chair, that is just the last slide of our response as basic education, that we are really just requesting now the honorable members in the portfolio committee to note the response of the DBE and the approach that we are taking to take forward some of the findings of the South African Human Rights Commission report. Thank you so much, Honorable Chair and honorable members. I'll give back to DG
Oh, DG looks like he's not around, but he is here. His iPhone. DG. Okay, looks like is not around. Members, can I hand over to you? For both presentations, I see the Honorable Madling Ozi, Mamuruane, Lodada, in that order.
Chair,
Mo-
I'm sorry to be rude,
Oh.
Chair.
Solma.
Yeah, sorry, Chair. I'm very sorry because by 11 o'clock, I'll have to get into the car. I have another meeting at 11:30 outside the office where I am. So I thought I should just add on to the points that were made by the previous speaker, and so that when you comment, then you also have a full picture of the attitude of the department, even to the points that were raised as recommendations. Okay, thank you very much, Chair, and thanks for the opportunity. I think, as Mr. Portman is saying, the issues raised by the Human Rights Commissions, it's issues that are historic, which we are seized with. In the previous administration, not this one, we even held a big meeting around school uniforms, which was convened by the NECT. And I think if we can, we will really want to retrieve that report that came from the meeting on school uniforms by the Human Rights Commission. And not by the NECT, where we had parents, we had the private sector on the prices of uniforms, but we also had SGBs on that forum, and there were agreements that we reached at that stage. So I think it would be helpful if we also share that report with yourselves, maybe and the Human Rights Commission, to know what were the conclusions. Amongst other conclusions was that, and I think as they agree, that in a South African context, school uniforms are the right thing to do. We can argue at length about the concepts that the Human Rights Commission is raising, whether school uniforms are about safety or not. It's not that it doesn't allow kids to fight or be gangsters, but it really helps even communities to identify where the trouble comes from. So we can argue at length. I don't think we have time for that, but we have really engaged most of the things. And as Mr. Botman is saying, these are issues that come daily, and we deal with them daily. I'm currently sitting with an issue about headscarves for kids from Muslim communities. And we are dealing with the Muslim community because it's a specific sector that has that issue. So you don't regulate over. So what we've done is to produce frameworks to say, these are the guidelines. And if those guidelines don't meet the requirements, I think we look at it. My concern, I hear Portman, because we have not discussed it with the time frames, to say we need to be given a year will be misleading the committee if we say be given a year. We're busy with school with SGB elections until April. We're going to be the next administration is going to be inducting them. And to say by December we'll have consulted adequately with all these new SGBs, with all these new, I just don't think a year is adequate. So I don't want us to commit ourselves to a time frame of a year. I just don't think, bearing in mind what this year looks like. So I don't think it's a realistic commitment. But also in terms of the process, and I'm glad that the Human Rights Commission also acknowledges the complexity of decision-making in the sector. As DBE, you have no right to, even legally, to sit with any committee outside CEM and take policy decisions. So whatever we do still has to go to CEM for discussions. And our next CEM is going to be, we have one this Thursday,
this matter cannot serve there. It can only serve in April. So if you're going to serve in April, provinces are going to go back. A year is unrealistic. So I just wanted to say the timeframes are unrealistic. We'll be very dishonest. Maybe I think later, between maybe the portfolio committee that will be there after May, and DBE, they can say what is now realistic, informed by what CEM would have decided on the matter. So I thought I should raise those things so that we also discuss this in the context of what are the realities of the. And I find it difficult to take it as instructions because there are things that we can contest, and I don't think it's for us to contest here and debate to say if the human rights does not see this thing as perhaps is perceived, therefore it's not what it is. I think there should be room for engagement and agree where we agree and disagree where we disagree and see how we move forward. But to really stay to say, this is what we say, you don't agree, and therefore the last word is the one who disagrees, then there's a problem. So I'm going to request further engagements, and I request that let's remove the timeframes and allow the next administration to work on realistic timeframes to respond to some of the matters that are before us. Thank you very much, Chair. So I'll stay on the program and will be in the car, but I'll wear headphones so I'll be able to listen until 11, Chair, when I'm speaking at my next commitment.
No, thank you very much, Ma. Thank you very much. You can proceed, Honorable Madlingozi.
Thank you, Chair. Ngicela ukuziveza nje, then ndibulise emolweni, ndiphinde ndibaleke futhi. Nkosi. Chair, once again, good morning. Please get well. Of course, let me greet the Minister, the Human Rights Delegation, and to my colleagues, good morning. Chair, the question that I'm talking about right now is the pricing and the sourcing of the school uniforms. Has the Commission looked at the forming of cooperatives or something like that would engage communities where the schools are situated, which could come up with small factories or rather centers where women and men who could sew these school uniforms and making it cheaper and thereby creating jobs for the people. And we have these places amongst our communities. There's a place in Walanga, it's called the Sinako Skills and Development, Ebukastebe, where they are having these young men and women who are very good at such. And I think that we should look at coming up with different places where these school uniforms are made, not the places that are normally known that no, you go to this place where it's cheap and all that. But I think communities should be given opportunity to do this. And of course, in terms of this allowing different hairstyles, Chairperson, some of these hairstyles, Chairperson, are over the top. And I think that they should not be allowed because they will disturb other learners, in class. And we know that culture evolves and it never stays the same. And we are talking about the coming world where most of us won't be participating in anyway. So, like the Chairperson, regarding the choice of the color of the school uniforms and everything, can it also be put into consideration that some of the places where these kids are coming from, they're coming from very poor families where if the color is light, so the uniform gets dirty quicker. So because they don't have money to wash it, frequently. And I think the best way would be having dark colors for these school uniforms. Chairperson, based on the, these kids discriminating, against one another because of how they dress. We know that in our schools, we have boys who are preferred to be fall on the girl category and they, they don't like dressing pants. And some of these girls also, they prefer to be boys, and they don't feel comfortable in wearing the dresses. I think the design of the school uniform could come up there where we come up with something that is away from the European style of wearing pants and dresses, where maybe a cloth could be worn by both sexes, like poncho or something that is like most of the African cultures are using. In fact, Amaxhosa now they would wear ingubo that are covering from shoulders to the ankles or even higher. So things like those could be introduced so that kids are not fighting and making fun of each other. And the worry about the school tracksuits chair also can create another problem where some of these kids would wear very tight tracksuits, and also that is going to be creating another problem that the learners, school kids are very about my maid. So yes, and the main thing is like the learners need to be comfortable in what they are wearing chair in order for them to be able to learn. Jabule.
Thank you, Honorable Morwane.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair, and also appreciate the time given to me to also have a comment on the two presentations. I want to welcome them and also to welcome the presentation by our minister, which of course have elaborated a lot of work that has been done even before this administration in terms of school uniforms. And we appreciate that also, Honorable Minister, that you will be able to share that with us while we are here in this portfolio committee. Honorable Chair, I want just to touch one or two matters. In terms of the uniform, Bella Bill seeks to address these challenges through the approval of school policies by the HOD. What I will want to check is that will the Bella Bill approval of school policies by HOD enable parameters to address uniform and appearance-related policies? Also on the infringement of the rights of child or girl learners, wherein they will also be checked in terms of their underwear. I believe if it is said under, it means it's private, it's within. And what has then made them to want to regulate such and check the underwears in schools? What problem necessitated the regulation of such an aspect, because it's a private thing, it's an underwear. Thank you very much, Honorable Chair, for the opportunity.
Thank you, Honorable Nodata.
Thank you so much, Chair. Good morning, Chair, and good morning to everyone on the platform. Chair, before I start, can I just check if I'm audible, Chair? I'm just in the rural areas here.
Yes, you are audible.
All right, cool. Thanks, Chair. Look, Chair, I just want to start at this point. Obviously, I just joined the meeting late. Apologies for that, but obviously, we received the documentation and the presentations way beforehand, and we've gone through them. I want to maybe start by acknowledging and actually agreeing with the minister on one very important point that I think is a departure of this whole discussion. And I'm going to have a question to the South African Human Rights Commission once I made the point. The reality of the situation is that we live in a very unequal country in South Africa, where there's different class groups of people. And we know from our own personal experience going to school in rural areas, getting scholarships to go to better schools, and how the treatment can be once people know your social, economic status or class, and the level of discrimination that comes with that. And I do think that in our own South African context, we can't use the United States as a barometer when it comes to uniform social cohesion, looking at the diversity of our communities. I mean, you go as far as seeing these things when you see a child that comes from Tsolo and a child that comes from Umhlanga meeting at a university, and how the level of classes, behavior takes form. And we need to also kind of curb that from a school perspective, because our own context, is actually not conducive for that. And that's why we end up with behavioral problems, in schools and so on, and children stabbing each other, attacking principals because of our socioeconomic challenges in our country. And we need to be frank and honest about that. And I appreciate research and inputs that are both evidence-based, but also are realistic, not just from a paper perspective, but from the realities on the ground. And when we have those discussions and those engagements, we must do it from that perspective. But unfortunately, in our context, if I would ask the South African Human Rights Commission as to which barometer or which country did you use as an example, for example, to learn from or to draw strength from advising on some of the advice that you've given in terms of uniform policy, linking with the department as well, is there any other countries that we go look at best practice on how to deal with the issue of uniform and the impact of that? But I think the main thing is to also understand that there are socioeconomic dynamics in South Africa, and we must always do what we can to make sure that children focus on teaching and learning at school, not on other issues. And there are other challenges that we do have, like, human trafficking is a growing issue in our country as well. And if we can't identify our children, there's a lot of things that actually these things contribute to, and we know them for a fact, and we've seen it in our own communities. We see it in our own churches when, there's uniform and so on. So I do think that there needs to be a discussion on this. And let's not take, we want to bash the Western culture, and then again, we want to take from them to say, well, children in these places don't wear uniform, and therefore we should maybe consider that. I don't think that's a fair assessment. And I do think that it does require thorough engagement with parents, with communities, and I'm sure that they will make their own necessary inputs regarding that. So I thought I just needed to make that statement as in the forefront, Chair, because I think it's quite important to put it out there immediately. What we should always remember is that a school uniform policy or dress code, should definitely take into account our religious and cultural diversity within the community served by that particular school. And that is why it's important to always decentralize decision making, but with the framework and guidance in terms of policy and law, but decentralize that decision making to the relevant parents and communities that know what is best for that particular environment. That is why you won't be sitting with a situation where a Muslim learner is in their own community where they need to wear certain thing based on their religion, now needs to be escalated, guided, or dictated by some HOD sitting in some office or by a national department. But there should be guidelines so that no learner is discriminated against. And I just wanted to ask from the department now, linking to that, is obviously uniform is regulated, and the buying of uniform and all of that stuff is regulated by the Competition Commission. Has there been an engagement regarding this particular issue from the department's perspective or department side, unless I've missed it? And what has the outcome been by the Competition Commission in making an analysis of these prices? Because majority of our learners in our schools, or a large number of them, are dependent on the social grant. And you'll find that they will get, a no-fee school, they'll get a meal at school, they might get learner transport, but everything else, they would get stationery, but everything else like uniform and other necessities that may need, the parents need to give them the support. And have we had an engagement with the Competition Commission on how to best regulate that and give assistance to schools and community to have a variety of options on how to best afford a school uniform, knowing very well that it's beneficial in various aspects that we can do research on. The second thing is that like the South African Human Rights Commission, we understand that the school uniform should not impede access to education in any manner and do not infringe in any constitutional rights of persons. And I think there are recourse mechanisms that exist in the South African Schools Act within the Constitution on its own to be able to take up issues of that nature when there are those levels of discrimination. I think that's why it's important that any policy determined by a school must be in line with the constitution. Otherwise, it can be challenged. And there are mechanisms available in different provinces to be able to deal with that. And I wanted to check with the department, is there a discussion to be able to strengthen those mechanisms to make sure that if we find ourselves where, I mean, back in school, even myself, I mean, I was told, well, you must keep your hair short and you can only join the dots looking backwards. But actually, you know, that's not right, you know? And it's not like these things did not happen, they still don't happen. But we need to make sure that we've got strengthened mechanisms that exist where there can be interventions by parents, there can be interventions by communities to escalate the issues to the districts or the provinces so that we can apply the necessary law that ensures that we protect our constitutional rights, especially for learners in those particular schools. Now, I just want to ask very specific questions as a departing fact chair. One, considering, you know, indigent learners, is the Department of Basic Education considering subsidizing learners on school uniform based on the discussions you may have had with the Competition Commission, or is there a separate discussion that seeks to give support to learners so that at school they are not discriminated against, as I indicated in the beginning?
Chairperson, I think we may have lost Honorable Nodada. I'm not sure if he can hear us, but we can't hear him. His mic seems to be on as we speak.
But
You can't hear me, Mr. Chair?
you can proceed.
All right, cool. The question I was asking secondly, Chair, is this: the supply of school uniform in most cases is limited to certain suppliers who agree with some school governing bodies, as we have seen, where prices can be fixed and, you know, can be unaffordable for low income groups. And I wanted to check whether, you know, how regulated are these suppliers of school uniforms, and who is responsible for regulating the pricing, you know, of that? If, for example, a school governing body agrees to that, you know, do we just leave it to that, or is there an intervention mechanism that can be made in cases of that nature? Like I said, we need to leave the decision-making responsibility to those parents and communities. But if we find that it is unreasonable and it is a problem, what regulating factors exist there? And then the last one from my side is the department considering a standardized guideline uniform policy, if it doesn't already exist, that obviously does not impose, but gives guidance on how to go about doing this and what support is available from the department so that we can make sure we curb these type of issues. And I think I'll leave it at that, Chair, and just say, you know, from the presentation from the South African Human Rights Commission, I take some of the input. I mean, we value Chapter 9 institutions and the work that they do, but I do take some of the inputs with a pinch of salt, and I do think that it requires more and more engagement so that we can find middle ground, so that we can protect the constitutional rights of learners. But at the same time, in doing so, let us not act as if we live in a different country, in a first world country when we live in South Africa. And we need to consider those cultural, very diverse, religious, and just beliefs that are very, very diverse within our communities, and see how we can best give guidance, but also leave the decision making to the parents and communities that know what is best for their children. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Sukers.
Yes, good morning, Chair. Good morning to my colleagues and good morning to the presenters of the Human Rights Commission. I think Honorable Nodada underlined the comment that I wanted to make before I start with my questions, which is the issue of decision-making, and that it needs to be at a school level and that it must involve parents and communities. Because I get very concerned when I look at the presentation and I learn and I listen to some of the input and some of the comments and things that was said, especially as underlined by Honorable Nodada again, that we live in a very religious and a culturally diverse South Africa. And we definitely cannot be imposing to communities, to parents and to schools from a different context when it comes to these issues. I have two serious concerns. The first is the priority that is being given to the report when we look at what the current issues that are really burning in our communities are, which is the issue around learner pregnancy, gang violence, bullying, the issue of SGB language discrimination, and the lack of progress on online schooling. My office has been trying to get a hold of the Human Rights Commission on a few issues. There are issues in the Northern Cape that I've worked with a more responsive Human Rights Commission, and then issues down here where we don't get you even on the phone, and issues where communities are really dealing with serious violations. So when you look at within that context, and I listen to this presentation, I have a very serious issue and concern around priority. During the South African Human Rights Commission presentation to the Portfolio Committee on the Bella Bill, for instance, the South African Human Rights Commission stated that the research on nature and scale of SGB on language policy discrimination needed to be conducted. What is being done on this, for example? And this is again my question about priority. I have to support the minister's view when it comes to the timeframes that are unrealistic, and more importantly, the fundamental issue that is that any action needs to be preceded by national dialogues. So when you hear the word stakeholders, we want to know who those stakeholders are. Who are the stakeholders that are being consulted? Who's the people that actually are giving the inputs into the stuff that we are listening and hearing? And especially the issue around the research. How much of the items or things that how
Chairperson, I think we've lost Honorable Sukers as well.
dialogues?
Who's gone? Sukars for me?
Honorable Sukers seems to be back.
Seems to be back here.
Sorry, Chair, can I
sorry.
speak?
Yeah, we lost you. We lost you a bit.
Okay. So if you lost me, I said I support the minister's are unrealistic, but more importantly, the fundamental issue is that any action needs to be preceded by national dialogues. And the South African Human Rights Commission cannot dictate to the public, to parents, and to the sector. All human rights require balancing with all the affected parties' rights. And I said, Chair, that when the moment we start hearing the issue around stakeholders, it needs to be defined. Who are the stakeholders? What is the research? And what is the data that informs it? Informs the assertions that are being made or even the suggestions that are being put forward. On the issue of transgender learners, a vital factor is parental involvement. And until we have a clearly articulated parental involvement policy that covers all aspects of parental involvement, we should not move forward, Chair. And I was just also brought to the impression around the issue of school uniforms when you look at in the context of children not even having shoes to go to school, or in the middle of winter when you have children that are really struggling. Siekugat, for instance, we had a problem during winter where children didn't even have proper shoes. Children were coming with slippers to school. So when you look at it within that context, it changes really the picture in terms of where should the priority be in terms of the rights of people, human rights. Thank you.
Thank you, Principal.
Modula Stulo, I know you can hear me. There will be no need for me to ask, can you hear me? Chairperson, thank you very much for this opportunity. Maybe for a start, let me join my predecessors in acknowledging, welcoming, and appreciating the two reports as presented to this all-important portfolio committee on basic education. I'll go further to say and join Honorable Sukers in her support for the minister with regard to the timeframes as put and recommended by the Commission. The timeframes put, Chairperson, is not only unrealistic, but to be honest, it is equally unreasonable. We are addressing a very serious societal matter. And for us to arrive at a workable goal and conclusion, we need to adequately consult with all stakeholders on matters education. Well, it is true that this whole thing must be taken in its full and proper context. And that's the point where I'm going to begin. Chairperson, let us inform South Africans, those who are listening and those who are watching, and everyone else, that South Africa is a diverse country with a varying historical context, which impact on the school contributions, whatever it may be. Apartheid and colonialism impacted negatively on the culture and religion of our people. We can also take into consideration that there will always be a variety between rural and urban culture as a result of what I've just indicated above. Now, maybe I can start by raising just a simple general question to the Commission. Will the Bella Bill's approval, as we are just already at the tail end of approving and getting this bill being gazetted, will the Bella Bill's approval of the school policies by HODs not be able to address the uniform and appearance-related policies in our schools? I heard, Chairperson, when Honorable Nodada talking once more against the role which is to be played by the HODs, by the MECs, the minister, and the DG in this education of our children. You can't do away with that. The center must always and will always have to hold. Whether it's the ANC-led government, Honorable Chair, whether it's the DA-led government, if ever it will ever be, whether it's the EFF, the center must hold and the center will always hold. Hence my question. But nonetheless, let me go a step further and indicate with regard to what is contained in the report with regard to the psychosocial impact. There is need, Chairperson, to ascribe a meaning to school uniform and the psychosocial impact. It should be heavy. Now, my question with regard to that is, what philosophical underpinnings should inform us in defining uniforms, purpose, and our schools' differentiated nature? That's my first question. The second one is a contribution based on the South African Human Relations Council. Generally speaking, you and I will agree that it's true, undisputed, and undebatable that school uniform enhances on safety, discipline, and with regard to the learning environment of our learners. What I hear, I'm talking subject to correction, from the report and findings by the SAHRC is that the assertion that school uniform significantly contribute to the learner safety is questioned by the same commission. Can they maybe unpack that so that I may be able to understand? The next question at my disposal, Chair, is based on the costs of the school uniform. Well, the cost of school uniform can be prohibitive, I agree, leading to a lack of access to education for some learners, because no families are equal. Some are born great and with some born wanting. Now, my question with regard to the costs of the school uniform is, what is the market structure of the uniform manufacturing industry? Because we cannot go deep into talking about the cost of the school uniform without us knowing the market structure of such uniforms. My next question, Honorable Chair, which was almost covered, but I think it's important for me to make emphasis, covered by Honorable Moruane, is with regard to the girls' underwears. On the regulation of the girls' underwears, which in my view invades on girls' privacy and dignity. Now follows my question. What is the extent of regulating underwears in schools, and what problem necessitated regulating such an aspect? Maybe the last question. Let me touch the aspect on hair policies. Yeah, because this one is trouble. Many principals are being charged based on this, because schools will come with regulations or policies which end up putting them in deep trouble. On differentiating hair policies, the recommendation from the SAHRC says DBE must abolish hair policies. If I did not see well, because of ageism, can I humbly request the SAHRC to school me if my understanding and what I saw it was. You see, the DBE must abolish hair policies, differentiating between male and female learners. Now comes my question, Chair. Why should the binary identities be abolished, as they also represent a right of a learner, be it a guardian? And why is the SAHRC not recommending inclusion or non-binary inclusion to protect the right of learners who identify differently? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Principal Honorable Fansay.
Thank you, Chairperson, and good morning to everyone on the platform, and thank you also for the presentations. Chairperson, I just want to make a couple of comments. Obviously, decisions must be made at the school level with SGB, parents, and children. It cannot be a one-size-fits-all scenario. As what Honourable Morasetla is trying to say, that it must be taken to the HODs. I want to echo what Honourable Nodada said, that we need to decentralise decision-making to the ground level, not take it all the way to the top at an HOD in an office somewhere. Then I also agree that uniforms play a vital role in our societies and that it must be the norm, especially with our socioeconomic climate. Like the SAHRC said, some children can afford Adidas and Nike and others simply cannot. So, children will be ridiculed for something that they have no control over. I want to also support Honourable Nodada by saying that children only need to focus on a good quality education and a conducive learning environment, not all the other noise that comes with that. Then just two short clarity-seeking questions from my side. Number one, what considerations are taken into account when setting guidelines for school uniform designs to ensure affordability for all families? And the second one, how does the department collaborate with schools and parents to strike a balance between uniformity and allowing for unique school identities? Thank you, Chair.
Well, thank you very much to all the members that have made a contribution to this, to both the presentations. I've got just a few issues to raise, which I think partly members did speak on them. And I think it must be clear to the Human Rights Commission that we do recognize and we understand their mandate as the portfolio committee. But from my side, my personal question would be, what is the substantive nature of the complaints that have been received by yourselves? And I'm also interested in really knowing who is this that is complaining. Is it the learners? Or is it the teachers? Or is it the parents? And if they are learners, what could be the age group of the people that are complaining? Maybe I should also make a reference to our meeting of Belabil, particularly the one that we had in Gqeberha, in the Eastern Cape. Because part of the stakeholders that were there were the traditional leaders. And I'm interested in knowing, have you consulted the traditional leaders? Have you consulted the school governing bodies? And of course, the faith-based organization, and what could have been their response? I do hear what you have presented. However, what are positive things that you may elicit about the school uniforms? Because the uniforms in general, they are worn by many bodies, because I'm just trying to think the learners as they are at a school level. What would we say to them when they want to be doctors one day, because doctors are wearing uniform, police are wearing uniform, the nurses are wearing uniform, even securities are wearing uniform, the military, all of them, whether it's Navy, whether it's health services, they are uniform.
Chairperson, I think we have lost you. If you can hear us, Chairperson.
I still lost?
You are back now, thank you.
Oh, I don't know where I was. But generally, I'm just thinking if these children would want to take a career path, that would want them to wear a uniform, and yet would want to say that uniform is over-regulated. Minister has dealt with a number of issues, because the issue that I wanted to speak on was where on your conclusion you are giving the department 6 months, which I was also of the view that it is unrealistic. Now, when we say that education was brought by colonialism, this country of ours is not America, is not any other country for that matter. So all of us, I think, in this meeting, we grew up wearing uniform, and that's what makes us unique, and that's what also hides our background, because we know children at schools are coming from different backgrounds, so uniform is helping them to look the same, not to be discriminated on the basis of what type of households are they coming from. That will be that from my side. I think I'm going to allow the Human Rights Commission to respond first, and then after that, the DG will be leading the responses. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Chair. Chair, let me start by acknowledging the presentation from Director Botman and the Minister's additions. Thank you for those helpful remarks. Chair, let me start by saying that we do recognize and acknowledge that the department is also seized with some of these matters. But secondly, to say that as we say in our report, we do acknowledge the sensitivities in this sector, that we are dealing with serious issues to do with culture, religion, sexual orientation, but also, socioeconomic status. So we are very, very sensitive that any solutions that we recommend, that it takes into account those factors. This is why, Honorable Chair, we decided to institute an inquiry as opposed to dealing with these matters on a complaints-by-complaints basis. Just like the department, we do receive complaints on a daily basis, complaints about how school uniforms infringe on people's cultural expressions, on their sexual orientation, on their religious beliefs. On a daily basis, we receive such complaints in the Eastern Cape, but also nationally. So what we decided to do is to hold an inquiry as per our powers in terms of the Constitution and our Act, which will allow us to involve a number of stakeholders. So just to confirm that at the inquiry, various stakeholders from faith-based communities, from NGOs, from LGBs, from various departments in the province did participate in the inquiry. And this is the basis for our recommendations and our findings, that it is based on an inquiry that took into account submissions from various actors. So that's why we had this wide-ranging inquiry. I should also emphasize, Chair, that it's important that members understand that we are not calling for the abolishment of uniforms. Our recommendation is not to abolish uniforms, but as per our mandate, we have to balance different constitutional rights, the rights to equality, the rights to cultural and religious beliefs, the right to dignity, the right, to not to be discriminated on the basis of sexual orientation, and so forth. So this report does not emphasize one right over another. We seek to balance different constitutional rights. Chair, let me also say that in terms of the timeframes from Director Bottoman and from the Minister, we will be willing to engage with the department on a timeframe. So if they can make a proposal, we will be willing to engage with them. So we do take into account the constraints that they mentioned in terms of the timeline and also how this year looks like. Yes, if the department can come back to us with a written proposal in terms of the timeframes, we can take it from there. I should also bring to the attention of the committee chair that we have developed a model code of conduct. So we're not just making findings and recommendations, but as the Human Rights Commission, as per our mandate and our constitutional powers, we have developed a model code of conduct which suggests how schools can, align their code of conduct to be in line with the Constitution. We do understand that different schools have different identities, different localities have different expressions. However, any code of conduct, when it comes to issues of hair, when it comes to issues of uniforms, must be in line with the Constitution. So last year, we did develop a model code of conduct, which we did send to the department, and we are in conversation with the department about that code of conduct. Lastly, Chair, from my side, in terms of priorities, this is not the only issue that we are looking at as the Human Rights Commission. We also have a report on pit latrines, the eradication of pit latrines as an example, which is a very serious issue where we see a lot of our learners not only falling and dying in those pits, but also infringing on their right to clean environmental health. So the issue of pit latrines is an issue that we've looked at and we've made specific recommendations, and we continue to monitor that different provinces do eradicate pit latrines. We have also been in touch and engaged with the department on issues of reading for meaning, the issue of literacy. So just to say, Chair and honorable ministers, honorable members, that, in terms of priorities, school uniform is a priority, but we are also looking at other areas that are of concern. Lastly, Chair, with your permission, may I hand over to Dr. Carter to address specific questions on the inquiry and on the report. Thank you, Chair.
Through you, Chairperson. Thank you, Commissioner Madlingozi. I think you have covered everything in respect of the context where this report comes from, as well as the work of the Commission. Perhaps just one or two granular issues from my side. Honorable Madlingozi, you've asked the Human Rights Commission in respect of the cheaper school uniforms. I think it was also mentioned by the department that this is an assessment that we have asked the department to undertake alongside the Competition Commission, and the options that you have put forth would be very helpful in coming to some form of a way forward in this respect. In respect of the benchmarking, Honorable Madlingozi, you've also asked, have we done research? And what has our research been? Absolutely. The report is full of citations where we had to go and look and do comparative analysis with respect to what other countries are doing. And perhaps maybe if I can link this comment, Honorable Madlingozi, also very clearly agrees with the Human Rights Commission's report, where we say South Africa is not the global north, or South Africa finds itself in the global majority, where our context differs greatly from where we are saying a lot of these concepts have been imported, not only as a result of colonialism, but also perpetuated through apartheid. So I agree, and I thank the honorable members for also revisiting this, because what we are saying precisely through this report is to say, what is the South African context? Can we reflect on our own legacies? Can we reflect on the diversity that makes this country so different, but also strengthens this country very uniquely so? And Honorable Nodada, then in respect of the comparative analysis, unfortunately, the research on this is very limited. And that's why the Commission also encourages that further research be made in this respect. The only other comparator that we could find in respect of the global, let's say, South majority in Africa would have been Botswana. And in respect of this research, it was very clearly echoed that the school uniform policies were imported in Botswana clearly and directly as a result of colonialism. So yes, that is certainly echoed within our report. Now, I think in terms of echoing again that we are an unequal society, Commissioner Madlingozi has made it clear that we are not calling for the abolishment of school uniforms. However, school uniforms then need to be accessible and affordable. So further to that, I think, Honorable Sukas, you've indicated the priority of the report. Commissioner Madlingozi has also indicated that the Commission on a yearly basis undertakes several activities to strengthen and to promote the rights in terms of the basic education sector. And these are but two examples of the measures that are available to us when we undertake the mandate that we have in terms of our constitution as well as our mandating legislation. So perhaps in terms of the consultative process, yes, Commissioner Madlingozi has indicated that the Commission did undertake a quite an extensive consultation process. And in respect of traditional communities as well, the Commission not only consulted with the Eastern Cape House of Traditional Leaders, we also consulted, for instance, with the SA Hindi Mahasabha, where we then unpacked how school uniforms and perhaps sometimes restrictive school uniform policies might impact not only on the children, but in the community's right to expression and religious and cultural freedoms. So those are just a few overarching thoughts, but of course, consultation is very important for us, but the Human Rights Commission's benchmark remains the Bill of Rights. And what we also want to, and perhaps maybe reflecting, Chair, on the questions you have asked on the age groups, who's complaining to the Human Rights Commission? Well, we have a child-friendly complaints handling procedure as well, where each of our provincial officers also have an environment where children can come and provide us with their concerns. Now that has been used, but also we receive concerns from parents. So both parents and children alike have entered the offices of the Human Rights Commission, and perhaps maybe only to reflect on one of these issues. In Limpopo, the Nare Impela matter was a groundbreaking matter where the Human Rights Commission went to court where a transgender learner was forced and humiliated and harassed as a result of her gender identity. Now, this learner, unfortunately, she is no longer with us, but was a groundbreaking matter in explaining and expressing what the treatment is children endure when a simple thing is just being allowed to wear the uniform that relates to their gender identity could have made her life much, much easier. We also have examples of children refusing to go to school because of anxiety, because their parents cannot pay for their hair to be cut. We've had examples of parents coming to us to say that their child has been excluded from school because she wanted to wear pants. So those are the questions that we have to engage with. And we must not forget that as adults, we must, number one, hear the voices of children, but number two, also understand that children do not sometimes have the agency to access the sources and the resources to call upon assistance themselves. So perhaps their voices are a little bit silent sometimes, but that means that we, as the Human Rights Commission, as well as honorable members, we need to echo their concerns and not let their silence be a measure for us not to let their voices be heard in terms of Section 28 and 29 of the Constitution. So I think perhaps I will pause there, Commissioner, from my side. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Carter. Thank you so much, Chair. Back to you, Chair.
No, thanks very much. Thank you very much. DG?
Thank you, Chair. I thought you'd allow the minister first because I saw the minister on. I'm not sure whether.
Is she in the meeting?
No, I'm still in, Chair, but I'm in a
Oh, no, no, I thought one bill, ma.
Usekhona, Chair.
Okay, all right. Apologies, Minister.
No, Chair, I won't be long because I think I've said my part before. I just want to make a few points. First, to say to the Commission, we always appreciate reports and feedbacks from different bodies because it enriches our work. So indeed, we do acknowledge and appreciate the report that has been shared with us by the Human Rights Commission. So we really fully appreciate the report. And as I said, it would have even helped, or it will help in the future, to touch base with each other so that we share information with bodies that really want to assist us in the work that we're doing. And I don't, as I said, I have no intentions of going blow for areas that the Commission had raised, which I said, if we sit together, we'll debate. Because indeed, we accept that the Commission is not saying away with uniforms, but they are questioning the rationale of what people would have said. So that's why I say I think we need to school each other about where things are. And I think members also, as members Sukers and other members have said, sometimes the locus of authority also matters. It's good to get NGOs, kings and queens talking about the work in schools. The bottom line, at the end of the day, these children belong to certain families and parents, and therefore, at the end of the day, they might have the last word. The king may want, or the chief may want kids not to wear uniform, but if parents want them, that's where it stops. So I think also, and I think that's why members were saying who was consulted, because parents remain, and the centrality of SGBs, again, we would have shared with them to say, on matters that are as close as even uniforms, costs, and other things, we depend on parents and SGBs, the very teachers themselves. Because remember Lydia was saying, what was behind the looking of underwears? I'll tell you, Chair, it's not general that children are asked to have two fingers. Then I go to school competitions, you will know, these girls wear dresses that are shorter than their jackets. They can't even bend, because when they bend, the whole body comes out because they're wearing string panties. And those are some of the things that I assume schools, because they can't just test you underwears if there's no reason. So there are issues that we have to talk about and say, is it in a school environment where we are trying to inculcate certain values and values amongst our children? Is there any way of managing it and handling it that kids can come with string panties and have dresses shorter than their jackets, and they can't even bend because they are going to show their bodies? And those are some of the things. And I think, remember, Lydia was trying to raise it, to say what was behind and who raised the issues. So, and I appreciate also that the Commission has helped us on a number of occasions with the reading report, again with the pediatrics. And I'm saying, let's discuss report by report, because on the reading report, we even invited the Commission, we agreed with the chairperson that we'll go into a workshop and again discuss where we agree and appreciate where we are fed in, but also share information of our own understanding as people in that space of what are the things that we're doing. So I'm really, again, humbly requesting maybe a face-to-face, not even through the committee chair, to say before you go out, maybe even have a report. It would be good to verify reports so that you have a balanced report, which is able to take all matters, because we're going to be arguing to say, we know of uniforms in Africa where people wear this African cloth material, which parents, maybe in South Africa, maybe even ourselves as South African parents don't even wear them. So our kids wear what we wear, plain colored clothes, and very strong materials because we're poor, which does not break easily. So those are the things we can share so that we don't go into a report and seem not to appreciate the work that the commission is doing. But if we can find an opportunity to exchange views, perceptions, and work, I think it will help greatly. But Chair, let me thank you and thank again the commission and thank the members for the input that they really have made, because I agree with most of the sentiments, Chair, and I don't want to repeat what members have said about timeframes and also the assumptions that are made in the report. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Minister. DG?
At the risk of spoiling excellent inputs made by our minister, honorable members in the commission, I must say that we've been well led in this meeting. There is a concurrence across the board that we work together with the commission chair. But just to Honorable Nodada, I think, and other honorable members asked a few questions. We have discussed this report that is presented here with 5 teacher unions. We've also discussed it with Association of School Governing Bodies in the sector, because those are organized bodies of parents. We've also discussed it with provincial education departments, and there were varied responses to this report. As the minister eloquently indicated that there are diverse views on these matters, and honorable members also confirmed that. So, Honorable Sukers, if we talk stakeholders, these are the stakeholders. We also have a forum that the minister usually consults with of civil society, which represents over 200 organizations in South Africa with interest in education. So we've not consulted with that grouping as well. And I think it's for that reason that the minister then said, look, end of the year, it's unrealistic. Given the diverse views and the engagement, I mean, getting learners back in 2020 during COVID, it took us 3 to 4 to 6 months to engage with our stakeholders and get them to concur in getting learners back to school. And I think I appreciate the commission also appreciating that reality, which means we'll definitely work together with them. And in terms of the Competition Commission, Honorable Nodada, we've met with them when they produced their first report. We also met with them, I think after that, I think we met with them twice or thrice. And we continue to meet with them, either our officials meeting with them, but also the commission had to come and present to various forums of the department, the National Consultative Forum, which I'm chairing, HEADCOM, which I'm chairing, the CEM that the minister is chairing. So they presented to various forums. There are guidelines on these matters that are under discussion. And I think that's why honorable members said, even the minister also emphasized that in her opening remarks, that in terms of the existing guidelines, we'll work with the commission if we need to strengthen them. But ours, it's a very diverse society with a diverse background. And as the minister would always caution us that schools are microcosm of civil society, not the other way around. It might be extremely difficult for us to move ahead of the nation and society Even values that are in the Constitution are negotiated in terms of realization and implementation in our society. We've learned that from our founding fathers, so we'll continue to do that. And Honorable Nodada, for instance, the role of the Competition Commission when it comes to school uniform would be to deal with collusion, where big market role players like Honorable Muratseta talked about the market structure would collude in dealing with prices, and they've found that evidence, and I think they've shared that report even in public, that there has been collusion in school uniform, and that's what is attributable to prices that are unreasonable, that are not affordable, and so on. But I must say, my pride and confidence has been restored in this portfolio committee. The guidance is very clear on what we need to do, work together with the South African Human Rights Commission, as we have done on a number of issues, and then work together in strengthening what exists. If there's anything that doesn't exist, work together to make sure that that exists in the interest of the public and our learners. And honorable members are saying many of these issues are best decided to where they are located. And the minister has emphasized that. That is our view. Our role, the role of the ministry, is to provide guidelines, monitor and support schools, but not to over-regulate what should be happening at school level. There are school governing bodies there. There is management. South African Schools Act, the vision of it is a self-managing school. So we'll keep that balance, but we'll definitely work together with the South African Human Rights Commission. I will start setting up engagements, even from a technical level, ourselves to look at how we take that process forward. But I must say, I appreciate the guidance that we have received from honorable members, from our own honorable minister, and even the wonderful report and inputs from members of the South African Human Rights Commission. Thank you very much, Chair.
No, thank you very much.
Chairperson, I'm done.
Okay, TG. No, thank you very much. At this point, let me thank the chair of Human Rights Commission. Let me thank the minister, the DG. Let me thank everybody from DBE that has been part of our meeting. Thank you very much. And I think out of the process, we have also learned a lot. I must say also, we did notice that this is, like I said, when I've started to say Eastern Cape matter, we could have referred it to Eastern Cape legislature, but we decided that we would want to understand the views of the Human Rights Commission at this level, because it was sent to our level. So I think we respect the views of the commission, but we have taken note as well of what the department's responses, or rather attitude on the matter. So thank you very much. Thank you very much, and hopefully the working relations will proceed smoothly as we move forward. I am now going to release the Human Rights Commission and the department, and then we'll be left with members to look into the legacy report. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Chair. Good afternoon.
Thank you, Chairperson.
Khatebe, the Madlingos, are they related?
Into ezinjalo kukho Mnye umadlingozi.
Into ezinjalo kade.
Bakhona bakhona abazalwa iintombi zakamadlingozi kuthiwa ngomadlingozi kodwa ke masibamba apho.
Baba Madlingos.
Ewe.
I thought you are a commissioner from today.
Hey,
But in any case, from now on, you will be Commissioner Madlingos.
Oh, the voice, they are quite similar, the voices.
Yeah, man. We have got a Commissioner Madlingos in this portfolio committee.
Principal, sure.
Hey, no data, how are you?
Is he still in the meeting? I know he was gonna leave at some point, Leon.
Honorable No Dada, did you run away?
Oh, he's still here.
Why is he so quiet like the grapes?
He's still.
It's a choice to respond or not, Principal. I think it's a choice.
Oh, no, he has got a spokesperson these days. You know? Marina, how are you?
Principal, I'm good. How are you?
When are you coming to collect your mango?
You can bring it to the house. Thanks, Principal.
I wonder why. Why must Marina be given mangoes? Whilst Tina, we've never received mangoes.
No, Chairperson, I think what you are not hearing is that Marina is running away from going to the principal's house. I think that is what is important.
It's also a choice.
When you were a child there, so you would understand the context better.
Yeah, and also in communications, I was taught communications is hearing what is not being said.
Reading between the lines.
Hey. This report, actually, we're supposed to be doing it next week on the 12th. According to the program, ne? But this is a draft. It's a draft is presented for members to... We had asked members if they'd want to make inputs, make inputs. So let's allow you supposed to take the members through, so that if they still want to make an addition, just members to know next week on Tuesday, we are supposed to give in the report. So this is the report that we are handing over to those that will be coming after us, after the elections. So it is our report for what we have done and what we are leaving for the 7th administration. Thanks, Mrs. Posh.
Warmest greetings, honorable members. It has been a pleasure to be part of this committee. I greet you, Honorable Chairperson, Ibingo Igaba, and members of the portfolio committees in all their portfolios, respectively. I also greet the Minister of Basic Education present in the platform, Honorable Motsecha, and the DPE delegation, led by the DG, Ndatemueli, the parliamentary staff, our colleagues, stakeholders present in the platform, the YouTubers who are watching and listening, the stakeholders, I greet you all in the name of peace. As the chairperson has outlined, the report, as a draft report, we look at the legacy. What is it that the Basic Education Portfolio Committee of the 6th Parliament left behind? What activities unfolded from 2019 up to 2024. What happened? What programs? What needs deeper scrutiny? What is the positive impact that the committee has made to the schools, the learners, the teachers, educators, etc., and the impact thereof? What challenges remain, and what considerations for recommendations can be taken over to the next 7th Portfolio Committee of Basic Education? So this particular report, honorable members, succinctly, we look into those aspects. The report per se starts by highlighting the key highlights made in the period of 2019 to 2024. As part of section 1, it looks at the functions of the committee, it looks at the key challenges, and then recommendations. On section 2, the report highlights the DBE and entities, the method of the work of the committee. The committee works with a method. What method was applied in the undertaking of activities? We'll unpack that. The report also outlines the legislation that the committee has dealt with, the oversight functions in terms of the constitutionality of the mandate of the committee, in terms of the rules of parliament, and then gives a report overview specifying in detail each and everything that was done. At the end, the committee also looks at what needs to be dealt with as recommendations moving forward. In terms of the key highlights, honorable members, I will try to summarize them since members had received this report. The key highlights of the 2019 to 2024 include the fact that the committee focused on a 5-year period, reviewing the improvement on the quality of basic education, which included school functionality and also ensuring that the department is implementing priorities linked to the 2019 to 2024 medium-term strategic framework and the National Development Plan. The committee adapted its programs to address issues in the sector and discharge its responsibility through various tools. Key achievements include producing a 5-year strategy that we discussed and outlined, monitoring the implementation of key sectoral priorities, collaborating with other parliamentary committees, and also working with other governmental organs. The committee also visited provinces for oversight and had processed the Basic Education Laws Amendment Bill, the B2 of 2022. Sorry. Regarding the focus of the committee's work during the 6th Parliament, the committee focused on improving learning outcomes, in particular grade R to grade 9, transitioning of ECD from the social development to basic education, addressing COVID-19 impact on schools, the professional development of teachers, eradicating inappropriate school structures, providing learning and teaching support materials to ensure that this is happening, looking at inclusive education, the assessment measures, and the expanded access to ECD, strengthening accountability, ensuring that partnerships are happening in terms of the educational reforms, the ICT connectivity to schools as a resource for learning, the utilization of conditional grants, the psychosocial well-being of learners and educators through the social cohesion program of the department, and also looking at the sector performance in terms of international comparative studies which were presented by the department, and again, in particular teams and pills and resource efficiencies. On the next page, honorable members, the report highlights the key areas for future work of the committee, which include monitoring the implementation of the 2023-24 budgetary review and recommendation, meaning that the committee that is going to come, the 7th Parliament PCBE, would look at the 2023 and 2024 budgetary review, which this specific committee has worked on in the period under review, to ensure that also there's alignment with the NDP and to ensure that the department is aligned. The provincial department in particular is aligning its work and the annual performance plans with those of the Department of Basic Education, DBE, as national. The future work also includes monitoring measures to improve learner outcomes, assessment measures for learning, the eradication of inappropriate school structures, strengthening infrastructure norms, which is very essential, the 3-stream model, and interventions for the 4th industrial revolutions are also to be monitored. Progress made towards the universal access to information via broadband needs to be monitored in the future, as well as the high-level panel recommendations on key legislations recommended for address. We're moving now to page 5 to look at the key challenges that emerged. These challenges, honorable members, also relate to pointing out areas for intervention. The DBE's shortcomings to include the service delivery target, such as the training of unemployed youth. We looked at it as have maybe hindered some oversight plans of the portfolio committee. Some underachievement could compromise government priorities. And this also includes a look into the exclusion of MTSF indicators that could impact on quality education, which AXA during the BRRR 2022-23 has alluded to. The issue of ICT slow progress on e-learning, while infrastructure constraints also remain, that also were limited by the COVID-19 impact, that the committee's busy schedule also resulted in some delays. For example, when the committee had to adopt minutes and reports, that did not happen. And some of the reasons were valid. For example, in November last year, there were certain reports that should have been tabled and adopted, but Parliament program, where members were required for sittings, it meant that such reports and minutes had to stand over and be adopted, which is in the 2024. I'm just making an example. These challenges, therefore, impacted on the delivery, but it's something that we have to look at and work on moving forward. On the aspect of recommendations, this is just an overview. We'll come back also at the recommendations at large, and we will appreciate that members also add on the recommendations. The recommendations include that the committee should ensure that the DBE and PED's annual performance plans are aligned. Why? It's very important that when these project plannings happens and the processes happen, this reduces delivery delays, and also it makes it easy to track. And also it improves cost effectiveness, and that the committee should monitor the ECT, the funding model, and also prioritize the outcomes of the international study tour. This current committee went on this study tour, the outcomes thereof, which will be tabled also, I think the next week or so, means that the following committee must look into those outcomes. Now, introducing the report at large on page 6. Honorable members, we start by highlighting the work of the department and its entities which fall under the portfolio committee's responsibility. The department's mandate, as highlighted from the Constitution, it is required that the education is transformed, the education is democratized in accordance with the values of equality, the values of non-racism, non-sexism, etc. and also that the minister as well as looks into the aspect of legislation, and that the statutory roles to formulate national policy norms and standards are also monitored for implementation. In line with the DPE's vision for quality education, that they foresee that the South Africans should have access to lifelong learning as well as training opportunities to contribute towards the improvement of the quality of life. This, honorable members, is being guided also by the medium-term strategic framework of 2019 to 2024. Now, for looking at the work of the two entities, which is SAHRC and Umalusi, we've named the entities, both of them, and their roles in terms of what they are actually working on and what role the committee does over them. SAHRC is responsible for promotion of the teaching profession, while Umalusi looks at the qualifications and quality assurance. And now moving to the functions of the committee per se. Honorable members, if you look at this part, as a legacy of this committee, the mandate of the committee is derived from the rules of parliament, which is based on the provisions of the Constitution of South Africa, Act 108 of 1996. The committee fulfills its mandate by performing these functions: to conduct oversight over the executive, to process and pass legislation and international protocols in accordance with the rules of parliament and the Constitution, facilitate public involvement during legislative and oversight processes. The committee's functions also include conferring with the National Council of Provinces on legislation pertaining to basic education, conferring with other governmental organizations, and also dealing with any other matter referred to the speaker by the committee. Honorable members, if you can look at these functions and ask, did we do what these functions in accordance with the rules of parliament said we must do? It's a tick exercise that says, okay, yes, we've done this. No, we have not done this. But if your ticks are moving, as we have also checked when we're compiling this report, it could be one or two that may not have been achieved. Hence, in the annual report outlined that above 90%, the work of the committee was achieved. It is also looking at the functionaries, what the committee had to do, what activities took place, and what was achieved. Where we're sitting, you've done very well, and thank you. We really appreciate having been part of this committee. The next page, look at the method of the work. The method gives a design to how things are done. You don't just come and do things. Parliament works with protocol. So we thank the leadership of the management committee led by Honorable Chairperson and the whip, whereby our manager as well would give guidance to how we deal with matters in the committee and stuff, where we would sit and meet and convene as per meetings, briefings by the committee chairperson as staff, that when we're going to look at committee program, Mr. Brown will look into it. There will be preparation for monitoring and oversight. Mr. Kekana would look into the research briefs. Usistoli will be doing the things related to admin and system in the absence, and Rowena. Those were things which were driving now input to the work of the committee, and the reports which will also be analyzed by the content advisor. So everything behind the scenes was being driven by the engine of the management committee. And we thank each and everyone, especially the chairperson and the whip and our manager, for having given guidance that the committee could achieve its work in this methodical manner. Honorable members, the thrust of the portfolio committee during the period under review was on oversight and processing the Basic Education Laws Amendment Bill, B2. In terms of the oversight approach, also the committee would call upon statutory bodies to account, but in this particular period, we did not necessarily have statutory bodies, but we had the entities such as SAHRC and Umalusi and other NGOs in that aspect. So in respect of following the processes of Parliament to process the legislation, the committee had followed the public participation model approach as it ensured that public awareness of the Bella Bill is dealt with, that there would be information sessions, that there would be educational publications done, there would be radio, there would be social media platforms, and through appropriate information-driven initiatives that the public would have this as an approach, that this is how, in the processing of the bill, this approach would have been dealt with. For example, there was an advertisement of the bill calling for public comments and written comments in particular. There were oral hearings in Parliament with stakeholders who expressed their view that they would like to attend. There were provincial public hearings in all 9 provinces. How did the committee do this? This is explained at detail at the larger section of the report when you look at the specifics. Now, when it comes to oversight, the committee has a role to play over the department, that is to oversee the work of the executive. For example, in the delivery of learning and teaching materials to schools, the provisioning of textbooks and stationery, the provisioning of resources like workbooks, and also the committee scrutinized the budget votes of the department and entities, focused on the quarterly reports and annual report, as well as the strategic and annual performance plan over the period of the 5 years. The committee had also conducted study visits to provinces. All provinces were visited by this portfolio committee. Even though the committee would select set specific districts, but at least the committee has touched base in most of the districts where the where the schools are, in respect of provincial state of school readiness, the exam readiness, and basic functionality and implementation of key priorities. That's what the committee was looking at in terms of key oversight responsibilities. Honorable members, as section 2 of the report now highlights, the purpose of the report per se looks at highlighting the activities of the portfolio committee, the results which were achieved, the challenges that still permeate and were foreseen, and matters of follow-up for recommendations. The report also summarizes some key recommendations so as to strengthen the operational and procedural processes to enhance oversight role and legislative role. 10 leads us to page 11, where we highlight the number of meetings which were held in terms of legislation, in terms of processes of oversight trips, tours undertaken, and the committee's work done in the 6th Parliament. Honorable members, the first column looks at the activity, which highlights the meetings. In 2019, 2020, 21, 22, 23, 24. These are the number of meetings. To date, over the last 5 years, we had 130. How this was collated? It was collated through all the reports that were presented and all the activities and processes which were conducted as activities and products of the committee. With regards to legislation, between 2019-20 up to 2021-22, there was no legislation processed, right? But in 2023-24, September and October in particular, the Basic Education Laws Amendment Bill was processed. Hence, the committee had also produced those reports and had tabled it at the National Assembly on the 26th of October, 2023. So there's one piece of legislation that this committee has processed. On oversight trips undertaken, honorable members, on the period under review of the 5 years, each year, 2019-20 was 5, the following year was 8, 2021-22, 6, 2022-3 was 7, and 2023-24 was 6, which was did in January this year. You will recall that the committee started at a very difficult time, which we're projecting towards the COVID year. But because the committee was committed in its mandate, COVID, no COVID, the committee has done its work. The numbers speaks for themselves, the work speaks for themselves. And in total, we have 32 oversight trips undertaken. The committee didn't say no because there was COVID, therefore this year there was no oversight. No, oversight trips were undertaken in a very difficult time. Study tours undertaken in the year from 2019 to 2022-23, due to the COVID impact, of course, the committee couldn't, even though there was a plan essentially in 2020-21. So Finland was the country in which the committee undertook a study tour to benchmark the education system there in terms of a study visit. And that report, honorable members, will also be tabled in this month of March. So there's one study tour being undertaken. And again, this speaks to having accomplished now statistically the objectives of the strategy plan of the committee and parliament at large. In terms of international agreements, the committee was not presented with any international agreements to process, so there was none which was done. On statutory appointments, there was none that being done, and interventions considered. Here, there's none being done, but I'm subject to correction here. If maybe we have forgotten something, we can be corrected. Petitions, there were 2 petitions that were presented. I'll speak broader at the petitions on the other pages of the report. In terms of stakeholders, the work of the committee involves also working with stakeholders. We have highlighted them in terms of organized labor, the Labor Relations Council, the schools governing body and their associations, the learner formations, the non-governmental organizations, the government-linked entities, the Chapter 9 institution, for example, the meeting which you have today with the South African Human Rights Commissions. All these are critical stakeholders that the committee has engaged with. And most of them were also in attendance and had appeared before the committee in some of the processes, as well as when the committee was deliberating on the Basic Education Laws Amendment. I can highlight the South African Democratic Teachers Union, the NAPTOSA, National Professional Teachers Development Organization of South Africa, the SAOU, which is Suid-Afrikaanse Onderwyser Unie, the PEU, Professional Educators Union, NEHAU, NATU, National Teachers Union, SAPA. The Labor Relations Council had a meeting with the committee at some stage, the governing bodies, the NSGP, FEDSAS, Governance Alliance, Governing Body Foundation, SANASE, and NSGP, and some of them you've seen in person as they were following the committee wherever the committee was going in most of the public hearings. Those are the stakeholders the committee has dealt with. Learner formations, COSAs, non-governmental organizations that are there, they came on board. The committee has dealt with some of them. With due regards to briefings on public hearings, there were briefings conducted and also work relating to the public hearings, honorable members. And the report highlights that over the period of 5 years, on a weekly basis, that is almost every Tuesday, and other days which the committee would identify, the committee received various briefings from the Department of Basic Education and its entities and other relevant stakeholders. And the focus was on key priorities of the basic education sector, which also included the features of the MTSF and the NDP. These also included issues and discussions and critical priorities on schools, the schools connectivity, the access to ICT resources, migration of ECD, inclusive education, teacher development, supply, utilization, and improvisation and adequate infrastructure for the schools. So based on these reports, honorable members, some progress was made in certain areas, though some challenges remain, which means that the 7th administration has to look into them. Now, with the teacher development, there's notable progress in terms of the targets of the Funza Lushaka bursary being awarded to students enrolled in initial teacher education. However, the committee looked into the issue of the placement. Where are they placed, particularly in rural areas and poor schools that still need these young teachers for entry into the profession, and those which were still unemployed. Another aspect of the report, honorable members, was the issue of the inclusive education. The progress on support to learners with special education needs includes the adaptation of the books into Braille and the provision of Braille workbooks into toolkits into all languages, including the sign language. As honorable members would recall, when the members went on oversight, the program would always ensure that we take a high school or a secondary school, a primary school, a technical school, as well as a special school, to ensure that inclusive education is not left behind, to promote also the inclusivity and the resources that the learners need. With due regards to the provisioning of adequate infrastructure, this bonded to the aspect of ACD targets in relation to water and decent sanitation in terms of safe. The committee did note progress where it was made, and also an underachievement with regards to expenditure patterns on the ACD program. And on the 11th of November 2023, there was also a report pertaining to a challenge with unsafe toilets. And the committee in January 2024 then undertook this specific oversight to ensure that part of the program of the oversight of 2024 January on state of school readiness is also dealing with the issue of the unsafe pit toilet that the department is also working in. So that 7th Parliament, therefore, committee should look closely to monitor the implementation of the department's plan to address these backlogs, including the cost effectiveness and use of the budget effectively, as per Treasury notes. The other briefings, honorable members, that needed to be followed up, which includes the briefing which was done on pit latrines from the Eastern Cape, the KZN and Limpopo rural schools. The aspect of the 6th Parliament having followed up on these also means that pit latrines should be considered during the 7th Parliament as a matter of urgency or follow-up visits. On the aspect of alignment of APPs, which is the annual performance plan of the department with MTSF and NDP, this report, honorable members, draws the attention that the AXA briefings received and the committee briefings received from DPE, there were discussions that emanated, and some of these discussions, there was a recent engagement that the DPE needs to ensure that the PEDs consistently consider the alignment of the sector indicators and targets to the MTSF and the NDP. And therefore, the 7th Parliament should consider monitoring progress towards the inclusion of key performance indicators in the MTSF that are not as yet covered in the APPs of the sector. And hopefully in 2024-25, those will be included. This includes the number of unemployed youth trained in an accredited course of general maintenance of school buildings. Page 16 looks into the table of briefings of the key priorities. I won't necessarily go to all of them one by one, but what I just need to elicit here is that from 2019, 2020, 2021, 2022, 2023, for each focus area linked to the MTSF and the NDP, the first column of this report highlights the improvement of what the committee has looked into towards ensuring oversight on the department for improvement of learner outcomes and assessment measures to ensure quality and efficiency in the education system. And I hope that the members also had looked into that. The second one was looking at the development and supply of effective utilization of teachers. The third one was looking at strengthening accountability, improvement of school management and governance and district. So we've reported on that for over the last 5 years. The eradication of inappropriate school structures and construction of new schools and structures and provision of infrastructure through the ASIDI. The report also highlights the provision of learning and teaching support materials and funds in particular, the aspect of inclusive education, the expanded access to ECD improvement and quality of grade R, which has happened from April 2022, the school connectivity. As you can see on this report, honorable members, that gap is quite glaring there, which means that the 7th Parliament really has to look into that. On the aspects of partnerships for education reform and improve quality, we've also touched on that. The report also touches on the effectiveness and efficiency of available resources where the committee had received some briefings from the department. For example, the quarterly performance report for the year under review on an annual basis, the briefing on the education infrastructure grant, ASID and SAFE programs. There was also a briefing by the Equal Education Law Center, the briefing by the Section 27 on the aspect of provinces, which they were highlighting. And all of these at the end of the year, 5 years, as we note, there are provinces that also had to look into issues of infrastructure, in particular when there was burning and unrest in KZN and Gauteng. The performance of the department's budget review was also dealt with. So these were all about part of effectiveness and efficiency of use of resources. On the aspect of pro-poor programs, honorable members, you'll recall that our South African government has a pro-poor program. All the programs under pro-poor programs are highlighted, starting with 2019, 2020, 2021, 2022, consistently on social cohesion, on psychosocial well-being of learners, and everything that the committee had looked into being briefed by the department. The committee had played its oversight function on those. I can highlight the aspect of the issue of school safety, the issue of comprehensive sexual education, the impact of COVID, the impact of damages, the briefing on teenage pregnancies, and the impact of the gender-based violence on schools, and the teacher profession in particular being trained to deal with these matters, the briefing by Tribe 5 on the survey of ECD centers, the draft rural education policy, which was an engagement also with Kagiso Trust, the briefing on the NSC examinations on a regular period, and the preparedness of the schools when each wave of COVID was being addressed, and the learner admissions and policies in terms of the placement of learners, attending to the issue of the zero dropout rate in terms of the campaign, and all the programs that the South African Human Rights Commission had brought to the attention of the committee. For example, also the status of the healthcare of the South African learners at school, and issues of safety in Northwest and other provinces, and leading to also dealing with children with some learning disabilities. These honorable members, in terms of the report, was work done consistently over the last 5 years. On oversight agreements, there was none. Now, let's look at legislation broadly that was conducted as work of the this particular section 6 of this report, highlights now the phase approach which was adopted by the committee when it processed the Basic Education Laws Amendment Bill. That prior to any formal considerations, the committee had looked at this approach in terms of the submissions being phase 1 for calling for submissions, the phase 2 of the oral submissions from relevant and identified stakeholders who were held in Parliament, and then the third phase being the visit to the 9 provinces and 3 districts per province were identified. The bill, honorable members, now was considered and adopted. However, it has been dealt with now by the NCOP for concurrent purposes, which now the NCOP is further processing it towards finalization. Oversight trips, honorable members, conducted. We also highlight that on page 22, where the committee has dealt with, in line with the objectives of Parliament, with some oversight, and also the oversight. It wasn't just oversight to go to any area, but also on oversight and during oversight, the committee had made some pertinent recommendations that must be dealt with. 2019, the committee just was onboarded, so there was no oversight per se. But in 2020, the oversight had started with Johannesburg at the Lekgotla, the Limpopo State of School Readiness, the Teacher Award Ceremony, Gauteng provinces being visited, and KwaZulu-Natal and Gauteng and Western Cape. 2022, 2021, some provinces were also visited. 2022, Northwest, Free State, Johannesburg, Western Cape, Northern Cape, and then KwaZulu-Natal. 2023, there was I forgot to mention Mpumalanga, my apology. Mpumalanga was also visited in 2022. And then 2023 was Gauteng again, in terms of the Lekgotla attendance, the KZN. KZN 1, here the committee was doing a follow-up because the committee was in KZN in 2021 and had made recommendations to the Provincial Education Department and the department. The committee had wanted to ensure that the recommendations which were made were being implemented. Honorable members, you were there. The report says a lot about what transpired and what happened thereafter when the committee was present in KZN. We saw the results of KZN NSC results in 2023. That speaks volume about the enhanced oversight role of this portfolio committee. KZN being at number 2 in the national NSC results, you should be clapping your hands and say we've done very well as a portfolio committee. 2023, there were also oversight to Limpopo, Northwest, and Gauteng. Sorry, these were not oversight, but rather the public hearings. All provinces, the committee had gone take around, and then they tasked him on special learners and special care centers in Pretoria. And then, citing the challenges, these challenges per se, honorable members, relate to the intra challenges, not necessarily outside when you're doing oversight over the department, because we have also to look inside, internally, as well as look at challenges externally. But externally, we'll look at it broader into the report. But internally, what has transpired with challenges that we have noted? That there were technical or operational challenges, and particularly when it comes to accommodation challenges. There was a concern, a recommendation that the travel agents was not always looking at accommodation for members in terms of the up to standard. And part of this being an issue for the members, then a recommendation was made that perhaps there's a need to utilize the government rate, and that the package must be such that in terms of approval, there's a rate which is special, and that the ground transport should ensure that the drivers have copies of the committee program so that on the road, they don't move this way and the committee is moving that way, or maybe in terms of the time frames, they are far apart from us and then we don't necessarily reach the space in time. So also the issue of drivers familiarizing themselves with the route as well as the venue to avoid getting lost or not arriving on time, or arriving on time when the school had long departed. If there's any other challenges that were observed, by all means, honorable members will welcome that to enhance this report further. The next page, honorable members, look at the special invitations or engagements per year. This relates, honorable members, to the department and entities now being invited to talk and speak to the members. So oversight was not necessarily going out on oversight trips, but also inviting some entities to come and brief the committee on specific matters as per priorities. So as per the pages move on 2019, these were all the special engagements. These are other briefings on the issue of other entities on 2020. Also the analysis, for example, of SONA, 2021 examination results, SAHRC Omalusi DPE. We also visited the offices to see exactly where is SAHRC when people talk about SAHRC as an entity. Where is the department? Okay, it's in Schoolman Street in Victoria. Where's Omalusi? We went to all those offices so that when the committee is working, the committee knows exactly where the department and the entities are. A quarterly performance report were presented, the annual performance report, the FCC also came in AXA on an annual basis to provide, prior the department presenting its annual report, to look at pointers that the committee must look at in terms of oversight. These are all the briefings, honorable members, that had were dealt with by the committee. And then page 27, it was the year 2020. Sorry for moving backwards. Okay. Honorable members, the committee will recall that apart from the briefings from the department and other entities, the committee had also dealt with petitions from as far back as 2020. There was a petition from Dry Hearts There was a petition from Ms. Matebese and another petition from the Namakwa region. These are petitions that the committee had also dealt with, because there's a rule that understands what petitions the committee had dealt with during the period under review. The status of the matric results, the status of school readiness, the oversight to school, the migration, the preparedness for the wave, COVID, the engagement with the teacher unions, the engagement with the SGP structures, making follow-up on the recommendations made Eastern Cape and KZN, impact of school infrastructure, the second chance matric. Those were also programs that the department had brought to the committee in terms of presentations. I think we have dealt with all of these, honorable members. And now what needs to be looked at? The committee's international study tour, as I indicated earlier on, would be presented to the committee. But in terms of the recommendations that we would highlight, honorable members, on page 35 of the report, I want to look at page 13, sorry, section 13. Section 13, honorable members, highlights in detail the title of the petition that was dealt with, the date it was referred to the committee, and the status. As you can see, all these petitions were processed, completed, and the report was tabled, and actually they are in the ATC. These are all of them from the residents of Dry Heart, the issue on the inequality of dual medium schools, the SAHRC and Nguvu, that was in July 2023. Now, what are the obligations conferred on the committee by the legislation? In terms of section 5 of the money bills and other related matters, the National Assembly, through its committees, which is now the basic education, must combine budgetary review and recommendations. This, the committee, honorable members, has done over the past 5 years. The office of the AXA was called to brief the committee, and then the audit outcomes were presented on the department and its entities, and this was held prior to the department coming to also consider its own annual reports. This process, honorable members, culminated, therefore, in all the PRRR reports which were presented. However, the 7th Parliament will need to monitor the implementation of the recommendations that the Portfolio Committee of the 6th Parliament had recommended in the 2022-2023 PRRR report. This is a report that the committee dealt with in November last year. So all the recommendations that the committee had made for implementation, the 7th Parliament should ensure that the department implements. Also, the 7th Parliament should improve the audit outcomes. The 7th Parliament should address the recurring challenges from DPE and entities in terms of if the issues of irregular expenditure, wasteful and fruitless expenditure, the aspect of reliability of the information on the LURITS database on principals or implementing agents. The 7th Parliament Committee of Basic Education needs to look into that. Also, to intensify the implementation of inclusive education to reach all learners, and to ensure that schools, special schools for learners with special needs, are well-resourced and adequately adapted for learners' needs. Address the deficiencies in respect of the curriculum coverage and the textbook retention retrieval system, as it was noted by the Auditor General. that the committee ensures that there's necessary support to, okay, the committee to ensure that there's effective and efficient utilization of conditional grants, in particular, that the department should consider clear performance evaluation frameworks and the utilization of grants under its control. And the issue of indicators, performance indicators, should be based on quality, cost, and time factors, and that the process should be put in place to hold those provincial educated departments that do not comply. Implement planned headcount reduction strategies to ensure that the department remains within its compensation of employee ceiling. Strengthen the monitoring of the ICT rollout in schools. You've seen the report, there's a bit of gaps there, even though there's progress here and there, particularly in rural areas. Ensure that ICT resources reaches 100% by 2028, as per medium-term strategic framework. Fast-track the effective implementation of competence assessment for principals, which is an indicator that is linked to the NDP. Take necessary steps to ensure that the budget follows the learner. The budget must follow the learner. Where the learner is, budget follow. Address deficiencies identified by the AG regarding grade R, including infrastructure, teacher-learner ratio, and their qualifications. We've seen something that works well in other countries. We don't say we could implement immediately, but it speaks so well that when teachers are well qualified to teach, we see progress in terms of learning outcomes. Strengthening the monitoring and implementation of curriculum coverage, strengthening district monitoring and support to schools, that there should be consequence management for district officials who consistently underperform, and for project implementers who delay unnecessarily the completion of the infrastructure in schools in these big veterans. Ensure that all training on inclusive education and special needs education is adequate, including the teacher assistance for schools of learners with hearing impairment, and also that they're enabled to teach content. That the second chance matric budget is increased, considering the needs of the learners to pass NSC and those in special needs education. Improve performance in relation to the teacher participation indicators and self-diagnostic assessment. The improvement also needed is on the aspect of relating to a city program, namely completed schools to replace inappropriate structures, water and decent sanitation, to work together with relevant authorities, for example, water and sanitation, public works, etc., as well as fast-track the implementation of plans to ring-fence funds for learner transport, maybe with the Department of Transport. So there's a bit of collaboration that is needed, that the 7th Parliament must ensure that this is done for the benefit of the learners and the schools at large. The consideration also should be made for additional funding for the ASIDI program, given that expenditure on ASIDI project is at the end 2024-2025, and the first quarter report of 2024-25 shows that the program has increased the number of schools completed. However, some are reaching partial completion. Consideration should be made to increase the budget of Malusi due to its expanded mandate. Malusi has represented, and the committee has observed how Malusi is struggling with the aspect of budget to ensure that its mandate is done properly and well. Now, other matters, honorable members, referred by the Speaker and the Chairperson, which includes also recommendations of the high-level panel. Honorable members would recall that in the 5th Parliament, there were high-level recommendations that pertains to basic education sector for consideration by Parliament and also members of the Portfolio Committee in the 6th Parliament. Some, in summary of the findings, include that the report for the HLP called for more reliable national assessments of learning, new ways of teaching basic reading skills in the foundation phase, is calling for broader access of quality and standardized ECD programs, including the transfer of ECD program, which now I think this one has happened, tightening up of school management and governance, including devolving management autonomy to school principals and improving the extent of returns on investment in education. These were recommendations, honorable members, which were made in the HLP report. It's a report of Parliament. It was done in the 5th Parliament. It's part of the stuff that the committee in the 6th Parliament has also dealt with, but those which could not have been dealt with, the 7th Administration Portfolio Committee would have to look into that. And issues, therefore, of follow-up also include that the 7th Parliament Portfolio Committee should consider follow-ups that may come from the NCOP regarding the Bella Bill legislation, and that the consideration and monitoring of the implementation of the recommendations and findings of the HLP report. Honorable members, the point that says the committee strat plan will be attached, it means when this committee report on the legacy is being presented by the chair, the copy of the strat plan will be attached, the master plan of the attendance register will be attached, and the annexure of all oversights conducted will also be attached as evidence that this legacy report is speaking on evidence, and this is the evidence. These are the references of the information where we have extracted and extrapolated information. On my part and the colleagues that we work with, Mr. Brown, Mr. Kekana, Ms. Dolly, Nkosana, Ms. Nongeba, Mr. Bandi, our unit manager, and Ms. Rowena, we thank you so much, honorable members, for having worked with us, for the guidance given, for the support where we don't know things because we don't know everything, but to the members in the manner in which we work with them, the support was quite overwhelming. And where we make mistakes, we acknowledge that and we highlighted those mistakes. And as we're still learning and also ensuring that the measures that we want us to put in place will adhere by that. We are here to learn, we are here to work, and we're here to serve you. And thank you very much for the oversight role that we've played and the legislations to ensure that there's improvement of the quality of basic education for our country, for the betterment of our learners and the society at large. We thank you, honorable members. Because
No, thank you very much, Sis Posh, for the presentation. Members, I am suggesting that we keep this report, and then next week, because we've got a slot actually for this report, we're gonna adopt it next week, Tuesday, because the intention is that we don't waste a lot of time on it next week. Those who would want to correct will correct, and then we adopt the report. But the intention is that next week we use that slot at least to give each other some sort of farewell messages, and use that slot, to share our experiences, but also to try to say goodbyes, our goodbyes to all of us. If possible, if we can be joined by the department as well, it's gonna be nice, because the 2 meetings thereafter is going to deal with the budget process from the department and the entities. So that's what I'm suggesting, that we have a meeting next week, we adopt this report so that it can be sent to the Office of the House Chair, and then we use that time to sort of doing our farewell speeches as the committee. I think we've had it our own for the last 5 years. It's important that we at least in a manner that is okay, say goodbye to each other. and so that's what I'm suggesting, which I don't think really can be. Your hand is up, Sukars.
Yes, Chair. I was just waiting for you to finish, Chair. I don't want to interrupt what you say. I just had a question. Shall I ask the question, Chair?
Yes, you can ask the question.
Oh, okay. No, I just wanted to make sure, Chair, anything for noting on the report, would we be discussing that next week as well? So we don't need to go into engaging the report now, if I understand you correctly. Any matters that we want to note or want to include, we can do that next week. Am I understanding you correctly?
If you want to make additions, that you can send to Posh.
Okay.
But if they are off discussion, of course, we'll entertain them next week. But the intention is not to take long on this report. I'm not sure where were you last week, because we had asked from last week already for additions. If people feel there are issues that are missing in the report, they should do that to support so that she makes addition on those things. But next week, we are not intending to have lot of time spending on the legacy report. Are we in agreement, members?
Yeah.
Very clear, Chairperson. We do understand the road ahead and the next steps to be undertaken.
Yeah. Sukars?
Yeah, Chair, mine is just to ask that the additions that I have, I did put in an apology because I had to leave the meeting early on Tuesday, so I haven't heard that part, but I certainly do have inputs that I would forward to Sis Portia, if those can be included in the report, please.
No problem. I think you've missed that, because we did say that if people have inputs, they can just send them to Sis Portia. So on that note, then we can, it's 13 minutes to 1. We can adjourn the meeting because there is a sitting at 2 o'clock. We can adjourn the meeting, and then we are going to meet next week, 9:30. Thank you so very much.
Nkosi, Chairperson, get better, get better.
Get better, Chair. Zanem Mvula.
Chairperson, thank you very much.
Recording stopped.
It was a long and protracted meeting, but greet on my behalf, Honorable Nodada. Please, the best friend to my beloved son.
No, Comrade Zanem Mvula, Umsusi.
It's okay. Right.
And also the commissioner. Please pass my kind regards to the commissioner.
Bye.
Bye-bye.